sinking through the sunless layers where light surrenders to crushing pressure at a pace that is glacial. Something impossible rests at the bottom of our world. Something that should not be there. The Mariana Trench, a colossal scar on Earth's surface deeper than Mount Everest is tall, is a wound that has never truly healed. We have mapped its floor, sent our instruments down, and chronicled its strange, dark biology, believing we understood the cold, fluid rules of the abyss. But what if the pressure that defines the deep is not a barrier, but a membrane? What if the boundless ocean, which covers over 70% of our planet, is not a simple basin of water, but a colossal, flowing veil? A threshold not just to another world, but to another reality. Tonight on Tierra Hueca, we plunge past the known limits. We will trace the folklore of underwater gates, examine the science of space-time anomalies at extreme depths, and explore the terrifying, beautiful possibility that the endless blue might be the final frontier, separating the reality we know from the one we cannot yet comprehend. Prepare to go deeper. We now confront the most audacious and unsettling hypothesis of our journey, humanity's true origin. This is the deep, dark notion that the world beyond the ocean portal, the compressed, chemically saturated, high-pressure parallel dimension, is not merely an adjacent neighbor, but the actual birthplace of Homo sapiens, making us the exiles, the migrants, and the descendants of a civilization that climbed out of the deep rather than evolving down from the trees. The scientific narrative of human origin is well documented. Life began in the primordial soup. Complex life evolved in the shallow seas and finally moved on to the land. Yet, deep-sea research has offered a compelling counter-narrative, the submarine hydrothermal vent hypothesis. This theory posits that life may have originated not in sunlit ponds, but around the high-heat, chemical-rich vents of the deep sea, where the energy for life comes from chemosynthesis, the oxidation of geological compounds. In our portal context, we supercharge this idea. The world beyond the gate is a fully realized chemosynthetic biosphere, one that has had millions of years longer to evolve its intelligent life. Imagine that the very first advanced civilization, the true progenitor of the Atlantis echo, did not merely live near the portal, they lived within the adjacent dimension. Their existence would be defined by inverted gravity and reliance on chemical energy. They would be master piezophiles adapted to thrive under the colossal pressure. The great catastrophe that sank Atlantis may have been the moment the two dimensions were physically separated, forcing the surviving portal world inhabitants to make the ultimate migration. The journey home, but in reverse. They would have utilized the USOs, their transmedium escape craft, to navigate the dimensional seam and colonize the low-pressure, sunlit, chemically poor surface of our world. This scenario redefines all of human history. Our biological flaw. The human need for oxygen and our vulnerability to low pressure are not evolutionary achievements. They are biological regressions. We are a species that has lost the ability to breathe the deep and must now rely on the fragile, solar-dependent atmosphere of the surface layer. The myth of the gods. The legends of sky people or beings descending from the stars to teach humanity agriculture, writing and metallurgy stories found in countless ancient cultures were not extraterrestrials. They were the highly advanced survivors of the portal world, our own ancestors, who brought their sophisticated knowledge of architecture and physics up from the deep to teach their less evolved surface descendants. The unconscious drive. Our species' relentless, almost compulsive drive toward deep-sea exploration, despite the immense cost and danger, is not curiosity. It is a deep-seated ancestral memory, an unconscious primal urge to return to the birthplace, to open the gate and reconnect with the true source of origin. The fear of the deep is merely the evolutionary adaptation that recognizes the lethal pressure differential of the dimensional threshold. The profound truth concealed by the ocean's depth is that the greatest alien secret lies within ourselves. We are not surface natives, but deep-sea exiles, forever marked by the memory of the compressed, dark world that now exists just out of reach. This realization imbues every drop of ocean water with a strange sense of familiarity and an unsettling feeling of primal displacement. Our vast journey is nearing its quiet conclusion, and we pause at the threshold of the deep, looking back across the mysteries we have uncovered. We engage in the Last Watch, a final contemplative meditation on the peaceful, endless, and utterly patient vigil of the deep, dark water. We have plunged past the limits of light and descended into the profound, perpetual silence of the Hadal Zone. Here, the ocean is not a chaotic force, but a constant, unmoving presence. It holds the planet's most ancient secrets with a patience that is incomprehensible to our brief, tumultuous surface lives, which are measured in decades, not epochs. The deep sea measures time in the slow, rhythmic grinding of continents and the millennia-long cycles of the thermohaline conveyor belt. The abyss knows no urgency. The dimensional warp, the gate in the abyss, sits sealed by the sheer, stable weight of pressure. If the keeper of the key is maintaining this vigil, it is doing so with a quiet, efficient resolve that requires no fanfare. The chaos of the surface, our political conflicts, our technological races, our brief flare of conscious existence is merely a fleeting ripple seen from the perspective of the sentient water. In the deep, everything is reduced to its most fundamental state. The bizarre life forms are the perfect expressions of their environment, efficient, slow-moving, and profoundly adapted to stillness. The architecture of the other deep suggests a civilization that has mastered stability and permanence, building structures that resist time rather than submit to it. This stillness offers a profound psychological comfort. The relentless crushing pressure that we fear is, in fact, the ultimate stabilizing force in the cosmos, anchoring two realities in their separate flows. It is the guarantee that the chaos of the inverted world will not breach our daily lives. The deep ocean asks nothing of us but our surrender to its scale. It allows us to shed the frenetic pace of the surface and measure our existence against the serene, vast clock of geology. To witness the Last Watch is to internalize the ocean's great lesson in perspective. The deep does not judge, it merely is. Its darkness is not a void, but a fullness of unexplored space where life finds ways to exist beyond the constraints of light and air. The bioluminescence as language is a reminder that even in the greatest darkness, connection and communication are not only possible, but beautifully intricate. The great vigil of the water is a commitment to permanence. It watches over the dimensional seam, preserving the integrity of our reality with the infinite patience of liquid mass. We leave the deep now, carrying the quiet hum of the abyssal zone in our subconscious, reminded that the greatest forces on Earth are the ones we cannot see. And the deepest mysteries are the ones that demand only our stillness to be heard. Let your mind drift on this sense of patient, unmoving calm. The watch is complete. You are safe, and so we ascend, leaving the compressed truth of the abyssal portal behind. We carry the knowledge that the journey to the other world is a choice of perspective, of curiosity, and of profound responsibility. The ocean remains the ultimate mystery, his silent, dark custodian of the threshold. The question is no longer if another world exists, but what our new knowledge demands of us. Will the echoes of humanity's true origin inspire us to respect the boundary, or will the lure of the unknown drive us to become the next Atlantis? The deep sea holds the ultimate test of our species' maturity. The silence we leave behind is a promise of continued vigil over the dimensional seam, ensuring the slow, steady progress of life on the surface can continue undisturbed. The threshold of tomorrow is not a distant point in space, but the moment you close your eyes now, carrying the vast, dark peace of the ocean within you. If this tranquil dive into the profound mysteries of the deep has brought you peace, consider supporting this exploration of the impossible. Like this video, subscribe to Tierra Hueca for more tranquil deep dives, and let us know in the comments what you believe rests at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Until our next journey to the edge of reality, sleep well, traveler. Our deep dive into the abyss must conclude its look at the portal's active presence by turning its gaze upward to the most unlikely canvas for interdimensional messages, the surface waves. We analyze patterns and messages in the movement of the ocean's waves above the most likely portal locations, considering them as the subtle, visible signature of the chaotic forces far below. On the scale of the vast ocean, surface waves are typically governed by two simple forces, wind and tides. However, beneath the surface, immense energies are at play. The turbulent energy of the dimensional warp, the gravitational pull of the deep trenches, and the seismic activity of the tectonic plates must eventually exert a subtle, non-conventional force that propagates vertically through the water column. This energy manifests at the surface not as a gigantic tsunami, but as anomalous surface expression, unexpected variations in wave pattern, height, and frequency that are impossible to explain by local weather conditions alone. One key phenomenon is the generation of internal waves above deep-sea trenches. Internal waves are not surface phenomena. They are colossal waves that travel along the boundaries of different water densities in the deep ocean. When the powerful tidal flow passes over the steep, asymmetrical topography of a deep-sea trench, it generates turbulent mixing and massive internal waves hundreds of feet high. These deep-sea waves, in turn, subtly modulate the flow of water at the surface. This modulation, the faint, shifting pattern of smooth and rough water known as surface slicks, is the visible footprint of the deep-sea anomaly. Above a non-Euclidean warp, the turbulence of the dimensional boundary could create persistent, abnormal internal wave activity. A continuous pattern of slicks and roughness above a specific, deep location could be interpreted as the surface map of the hidden gateway. Furthermore, we must return to the acoustic reality of the abyss. The constant low-frequency sounds emanating from the warp can generate pressure variations that, though minor, affect the surface flow. If the keeper of the key or a USO were to actively transmit an energy pulse to navigate the portal, the resulting acoustic shockwave could produce a measurable, brief ripple on the surface that our satellites or highly sensitive remote sensing instruments might capture. The key mystery of the Bermuda vortex provides the most compelling example of this. The sudden vanishing acts are often accompanied by reports of abnormal sea states and electronic fog. This atmospheric and visual distortion could be the surface expression of a localized, high-energy dimensional bleed-through, a geophysical plume where the physics of the two worlds briefly collide, creating rogue waves and optical anomalies. By analyzing these seemingly random surface irregularities, we can transform the turbulent facade of the ocean into a language. The signs in the surface waves are the planetary equivalent of the dust kicked up by a hidden door opening in a distant attic. They are the subtle, constant reminder that the greatest mysteries of the abyss are actively, quietly declaring their presence, waiting only for a careful, contemplative mind to read the messages etched in the water's surface. We arrive now at the inevitable confrontation between the two worlds. The journey home. This is the perilous, perhaps fatal voyage of a deep-sea creature, a product of the portal world's unique physics, attempting to cross back into our less dense, low-pressure reality. This is not a triumphant return, but a physiological catastrophe, a reverse implosion. The creatures of the Hadal zone are perfectly adapted to compressive respiration and the ultra-high pressure of the dimensional fold. Their entire molecular structure, from their highly flexible water-filled bodies to their pressure-stabilized proteins, is optimized for over 1,000 atmospheres. When a deep-sea creature is hauled quickly toward the surface in our world, the effect is immediate and devastating. Imagine an amphipod or a Hadal snailfish suddenly moving from a fully compressed medium to one with ambient pressure. As the external pressure decreases by thousands of pounds per square inch, the gases and fluids within the creature's body, which were in equilibrium with the immense external force, begin a rapid, violent expansion. This is not the bends that affect human divers. It is a rapid, systematic barotrauma for life forms evolved for the depths. The decompression causes internal explosion. Any minuscule gas pocket that might exist in a Hadal creature's body, or even the gases dissolved into its blood and tissues, will expand, potentially causing its internal organs to be forced out of its mouth or anus. In surface-dwelling fish, this is often seen as the grotesque eversion of the swim bladder. For the Hadal life form, the internal fluid balance is instantly and irrevocably destroyed. Protein collapse. The specialized proteins that were kept rigid and functional by the extreme compression, stabilized by compounds like TMAO, suddenly lose their structural anchor. The proteins unfold or denature, and the creature's cellular machinery stops functioning entirely. Its biological form collapses from the inside out, turning the highly adapted organism into a disorganized mass of gelatinous tissue. Molecular instability. The crystal ocean's highly ordered, compressed molecular structure, which provided stability, is violently disrupted by the decrease in pressure. The chemical reactions, chemosynthesis, that fuel the creature's metabolism are altered or poisoned by the shift in pressure-dependent chemical equilibrium. A creature attempting the journey home into our less dense atmosphere experiences not relief, but an unbearable release of force. It would view our light-filled, low-pressure world, our breathable atmosphere, and soft, squishy existence as a terrifying, lethal vacuum. The surface is the Hadal zone's version of space, a vacuum of pressure that tears apart life adapted to the opposite extreme. The consequence is a stark warning. The dimensional portal is a one-way path for life. While intelligent entities like the USOs possess the technology to navigate this transition by creating controlled pressure fields, natural life forms are irrevocably bound to their environment. This inevitable fate suggests that the boundary is protected not by a fortress, but by physics itself, a deadly, uncompromising physiological barrier that ensures the realms remain separate. Our journey has led us to the precipice of certainty. If the dimensional portal, the gateway, beneath the crushing deep were to be confirmed as real, humanity would face a singular, profound challenge: the responsibility of knowing. This is the sudden, overwhelming confrontation with the moral and existential implications of realizing our planet is not singular, and that we are not alone. The confirmation of the portal's reality would instantly collapse several foundational pillars of human civilization. The end of isolation. The myth of humanity as the universe's only intelligent life would shatter. The adjacent world, with its sentient water and its advanced USO technology, would become our nearest, most potent neighbor. We would realize that the final frontier was not billions of miles away in the cosmos, but mere miles beneath our waves. Our entire perception of cosmic geography and destiny would be inverted. The loss of planetary ownership. The two Earths. Theory implies that we do not fully own our planet. We merely occupy the light-filled surface of one-dimensional layer. The deep ocean trenches, currently zones of national jurisdiction, would instantly become interdimensional territory, requiring a complete overhaul of global governance, maritime law, and military strategy. The implications for peace and conflict would be immense. The paramount moral question would be, should we cross the threshold? The historical Atlantis echo serves as the strongest argument against intervention. It suggests that previous civilizations were destroyed precisely because they either came too close to the gate or attempted to misuse the dimensional energy. Knowing the truth forces us to confront our own historical pattern of exploitation. Would we view the adjacent world as a sacred new realm to be understood, or merely a boundless new resource to be plundered, ignoring the ethical fate of the Hadal life forms that thrive there? The confirmation of the time dilation effect presents a unique existential dilemma. Any attempt at long-term study or colonization would require accepting that the travelers and their home reality are operating on incompatible chronological scales. This means sending explorers into the portal is functionally equivalent to launching them irrevocably into the future, abandoning them to a different temporal existence. Are we morally justified in asking individuals to sever their timeline from humanity's? Furthermore, the existence of the Keeper of the Key forces a theological and ethical reckoning. If an ancient, non-human intelligence has deliberately maintained the separation, humanity must decide whether to respect that sovereignty or violate it in the name of curiosity. Our confrontation would be not with an enemy, but with a custodian acting in the apparent interest of planetary stability. The responsibility of knowing demands a radical and immediate shift in global consciousness. Unity. The threat and opportunity of the portal would require humanity to finally transcend national rivalries, as the consequences of discovery are inherently global. Humility. We must accept that our knowledge of the universe is severely incomplete and that the laws of physics are relative. Restraint. The greatest moral act might be the decision to deliberately leave the gates sealed, recognizing that the survival of our reality is predicated on respecting the boundary. Ultimately, the responsibility of knowing is a test of our maturity, our species' final, defining choice between boundless curiosity leading to potential catastrophe and humble self-restraint leading to sustainable parallel existence. The ocean's depth would force us to look inward and ask, are we ready for a secret of this magnitude? Our continuing contemplation of the portal world now focuses on the most persistent, yet invisible, phenomenon of the two coexisting realities, the interdimensional tide. This is the subtle, slow-motion exchange of energy, chemical traces, and residual matter that continuously leaks across the dimensional seam, creating a pervasive, hidden influence on our ocean. We established the ocean's vast thermohaline circulation, the global ocean conveyor belt, as the liquid transport system of our world. If the abyssal trench is the static pressurized portal, then the interdimensional tide is the slow, constant bleed-through that the conveyor belt perpetually picks up and carries away. Imagine this tide as a form of energetic seepage. The world beyond the portal operates under altered physics beyond the portal, sustaining itself through energy sources that are non-electromagnetic or chemically impossible for our realm. The dimensional warp, no matter how securely held by the Keeper of the Key, cannot be perfectly sealed. Consequently, subtle, exotic energy, perhaps a form of low-frequency radiation or unique gravitational waves, constantly trickles across the barrier. This trickle is then integrated into our deep ocean. The water molecules, possessing their water's memory, become imbued with the imprint of the adjacent reality. This energy does not manifest as a spectacular blast, but as a low, pervasive hum, a subtle increase in background quantum noise, or an unexplained anomaly in deep-sea heat flow measurements. The physical exchange is equally profound. Microscopic traces of the portal world's unique chemistry, perhaps silicon-based crystalline particles from the flora of the other deep, or unique heavy Isotopes from their atmospheric composition might be carried into our ocean. Once introduced into the deep currents, these foreign particles are distributed across the abyssal plains, slowly mixing with our own ocean ooze. This continual, subtle infusion creates a global network of anomalous signatures. Biological influence. The interdimensional matter, settling as a type of non-solar marine snow, could be the unseen nutrient source that fuels some of the deepest dwelling life forms, allowing them to bypass the typical limits of our evolutionary food chain. Geological markers, sediment cores extracted from the abyssal plain, if analyzed with sufficient precision, might contain layers of alien geochemical traces, a microscopic record of the portal world's composition carried by the tide over geological time. Navigational disruption. The energetic seepage contributes to the persistent, low-level magnetic and gravitational anomalies, Chapter 12, that plague the trench systems. It is the steady static from the adjacent dimension interfering with our instruments. The interdimensional tide functions as a constant, gentle pressure on our reality, a soft but unceasing whisper of its twin. It assures us that even when the great dimensional gate is silent and apparently dormant, the two realities are never truly separate. We are always under the influence of this tide, perpetually borrowing and exchanging material and energy with the strange world that lies just beneath our waves. The deepest trenches are therefore not scars of geological trauma, but living, breathing interfaces where the pulse of an alien cosmos is measured in the slow, rhythmic flow of deep-sea currents. We have journeyed deep into the abyss, confirming the conditions for a dimensional warp. We have found the physics, the architecture, and the life of an adjacent world. Now, our final contemplation in this act must address the ultimate existential implication. The two Earths theory, the profound idea that our home planet is not a singular sphere of matter, but a coexisting layered system of two realities that touch only at the most extreme geological points. This theory posits that our visible, sunlit, four-dimensional world, governed by the physics we know, shares the same cosmic coordinates, the same planetary volume, with an entirely separate dimension, the world beyond the ocean portal. These are not two planets, but two distinct realities occupying the same space, separated only by a membrane of highly compressed water and warped space-time. Imagine the Earth as a kind of dimensional onion, or perhaps two nearly identical tuning forks vibrating at slightly different, incompatible frequencies. Most of our matter and energy remain locked in the frequency of our familiar universe. But the extreme gravitational and tectonic pressure of the deep trenches, like the Mariana, creates a localized resonance point, a seam where the frequencies of the two worlds briefly align. This alignment is the portal. The integrity of this two-Earth system relies entirely on the stability of the abyssal lock. The immense pressure of the deep sea is the neutral buffer that prevents the two realities from merging violently. If this pressure were ever to fail, if the tectonic forces were to open the gate permanently, the sudden, catastrophic interaction of two incompatible gravitational fields and chemical laws would result in an energetic event far surpassing any known terrestrial disaster, possibly tearing the Earth's crust apart. The evidence for this layered existence is subtle but pervasive. The inversion of environments. The portal world's atmosphere is our high-pressure water. The sky is the ocean floor, and its surface is defined by inverted gravity. This suggests a mirror universe where the physical rules are systematically reversed, yet still functional, confirming a parallel, engineered structure. The nature of the USOs, the unidentified submerged objects, which move seamlessly between air and water, possess the transmedium technology required to navigate the barrier between the two dimensions. They are not traveling across light years of empty space. They are traveling a few miles through a dimensional seam, a testament to the proximity of the adjacent reality. The shared archetype, the persistent myths of submerged, vanished civilizations like Atlantis may not be allegories for simple floods, but cultural memories of the moment the adjacent reality's physics bled into our own, demonstrating that this duality has been a feature of our planet's history for millennia. The most profound philosophical implication of the two Earths theory is the loss of our singular identity. We are not alone on our planet. We are simply isolated by dimensional frequency. Every time a drop of water from the deep circulates up to the surface via the great ocean currents, the shifting currents, it is carrying the imprint of that adjacent reality, the water's memory, making the influence of the other world a constant, low-level part of our own global ecosystem. Our speculation now shifts from the mechanism of the portal to its intentionality. If the abyssal fold is a stable, persistent feature of our planet, a deliberate seam between two realities, it follows that such a powerful and volatile gateway would require a steward. We contemplate the keeper of the key, the ancient entity or intelligence that maintains, guards, and regulates the flow through the dimensional warp. This keeper would not be human. It would be an intelligence that exists on a time scale far exceeding our own, perhaps measured in geological eras. Its origins could lie either in our world's deep, Precambrian past, or, more likely, in the adjacent portal world itself, a being that evolved within the unique parameters of inverted gravity and physics beyond the portal. Imagine this keeper as an entity of pure pressure-stabilized consciousness. Its physical form, if it has one, might be a colossal, non-organic structure, a form of living crystal fused directly into the non-Euclidean geometry of the trench floor. It is the living expression of the gateway, its body, a permanent extension of the dimensional fold itself. This physical integration would allow it to manipulate the seismic, gravitational, and electromagnetic forces that define the portal. The keeper's primary function would be regulation. It ensures the pressure seal is maintained, using the massive weight of the ocean to prevent catastrophic dimensional bleed-through. The geological anomalies and the rhythmic, low-frequency sounds of the silent symphony could be the measurable signs of this keeper's work, the sound of an ultra-intelligent entity constantly adjusting and stabilizing the cosmic forces that hold the two realities apart. The occasional human encounters with the unexplained, such as the unidentified submerged objects, USOs, operating with impossible transmedium technology, may not be hostile incursions. Instead, they could be the Keeper's emissaries, unmanned, or non-human vehicles deployed to patrol the perimeter and investigate any significant anomalies like deep-sea mining or nuclear submarines that pose a risk to the fragile dimensional equilibrium. Their silence and evasion suggest a primary objective of non-interference, a mandate to observe and stabilize, rather than engage or disclose. We can speculate further that the Keeper is the guardian of a profound, dangerous truth. The mythological echoes of Atlantis, a civilization destroyed for coming too close to forbidden knowledge, could be the Keeper's historical warning to humanity. The fate of the Atlanteans may have been a necessary, catastrophic lesson delivered to ensure that the secrets of the dimensional warp remain perpetually hidden. The Keeper of the Key is the silent, colossal presence at the heart of the ocean mystery. It is the necessary bridge between the chaotic potential of the dimensional fold and the stable reality of our world, resting patiently beneath miles of water, watching, waiting, and perpetually maintaining the fragile boundary that allows our surface civilization to exist undisturbed. Our journey into the portal world has explored geology, physics, and myth. Now we turn inward to the most intimate frontier of all, the human mind. we explore the profound psychological connection between human sleep, subconscious thought, and the deep ocean, a concept we call dreams of the drowned. Throughout history, philosophers and psychologists have viewed the subconscious as a great, dark ocean, a vast, unexplored inner world governed by primal pressures, hidden memories, and submerged desires. Sleep, the process of surrendering consciousness, is our nightly descent into this abyss. When the brain enters the deep, dream-filled state of REM sleep, the body becomes paralyzed and the mind detaches from the sensory input of the surface. Sinking into its own liquid landscape, there is a striking, systematic resonance between the conditions of the deep ocean and the architecture of the dreaming mind. The pressure of the deep, the immense hydrostatic pressure of the Hadal zone, is mirrored in the psychological pressure of the subconscious, the ancient, primal forces and unresolved traumas that are compressed beneath the surface of our waking awareness. Just as deep-sea creatures are physically shaped by pressure, our inner lives are molded by the continuous, unyielding weight of our accumulated experiences. The loss of light, the midnight zone, where all sunlight ends, is the analogue for the subconscious mind, a realm where logic is absent and perception is governed by non-visual symbolic thought. In our deepest dreams, narratives twist in non-Euclidean ways, time is dilated, and communication relies on raw emotion and cryptic signals, bioluminescence as language, the sense of falling. The meditative feeling of the perpetual fall is precisely the sensation that often precedes the onset of sleep, the hypnagogic jerk. This is the moment the conscious mind surrenders control, feeling the profound, vertical descent into the fluid geometry of the deep subconscious. We can speculate that the dimensional warp in the deep ocean is not just a physical phenomenon, but a psychophysical anchor for the collective human consciousness. The existence of the dimensional portal may create a subtle, energetic resonance that the subconscious mind is uniquely equipped to perceive. In the detached state of deep sleep, our minds may be inadvertently tuning into the signals of the adjacent reality, receiving the whispers of subspace. Could the recurring archetypes of the deep, the colossal, unseen tentacled entities, the sunken cities, and the silent, watchful eyes be telepathic feedback from the sentient water or the keeper of the key? Are our collective fears of the abyss simply the subliminal perception of the adjacent, alien world attempting to communicate its presence? This connection suggests that our exploration of the deep does not require titanium submersibles alone. It requires meditative introspection. By sinking into our own deep sleep and consciously exploring the architecture of our subconscious abyss, we may be engaging in the most fundamental form of interdimensional reconnaissance, a silent, weightless journey to the boundary of reality, guided by the calming current of our own inner ocean. Our encounter with the Hadal zone's endemic fauna, the life that shouldn't exist, forces a redefinition of the most fundamental biological necessity, respiration. We now ponder the existence of life forms that require extreme pressure and chemical saturation instead of oxygen, the concept of breathing the deep. For surface life, including ourselves, oxygen is the universal electron acceptor for metabolism, and air-filled organs like lungs are essential. But in the deep sea, and especially in the high pressure, chemically rich conditions of the portal world, this process is reversed. The deepest, most isolated trenches often contain piezophilic or barophilic organisms, pressure-loving microbes and invertebrates whose optimal growth occurs at hydrostatic pressures far exceeding surface levels. For these life forms, the immense pressure is not a threat to be tolerated, but a necessary condition for life. Their entire cellular machinery, from enzymes to cell membranes, is physically structured to function efficiently only under compression. When brought to the low pressure of the surface, their biomolecules destabilize and they effectively lyse or explode, they die from the lack of pressure. The first element of breathing the deep is therefore compressive respiration. For a true piezophile, the pressure is an anchoring force that keeps their internal cellular water network stable, allowing proteins to fold correctly and chemical reactions to proceed. If the dimensional warp is sustained by extreme pressure, then the adjacent world is a fully compressive biosphere, where high pressure is the equivalent of our breathable air. The second element is chemical saturation. In the complete darkness, these organisms cannot rely on photosynthesis. Instead, they are often chemoautotrophs, microbes that use energy from inorganic chemical reactions such as the oxidation of hydrogen sulfide, methane, or elemental sulfur. Their metabolism is entirely based on materials that are often toxic to surface life. In the portal world, this chemical independence might be far more advanced. The inhabitants could be obligate lithotrophs, organisms that draw energy directly from the unique mineral and chemical soup created by the intersection of the dimensional warp and the terrestrial crust. Their existence is fueled by the raw, unstable chemistry of the planet's interior, making them perfectly adapted to the geological activity of the trenches. They would literally breathe the geological process rather than the atmosphere. This adaptation culminates in a revolutionary metabolic possibility: anaerobic respiration at pressure. In the deep biosphere, life forms can utilize alternative electron acceptors like iron, nitrate, or sulfur instead of oxygen. The beings of the portal world, designed by physics beyond the portal, might rely on an ultra-efficient form of anaerobic metabolism that uses a chemical energy source entirely absent from our surface world, and which is only stable under the immense pressure of their fluid environment. The existence of these pressure-dependent, chemically saturated life forms confirms that the rules of life are relative. For the inhabitants of the deep, our light, our oxygen, and our low atmospheric pressure are fatal extremes. They live in a unique submerged environment where the pressure is life, the chemicals are energy, and the deepest abyss is, paradoxically, home. Our deepest contemplation of the portal world now focuses on its most defining physical characteristic, the composition of the enveloping fluid itself. We move beyond simple water to speculate on the crystal ocean, imagining the medium in this adjacent dimension as a substance existing in a different, more solid, crystalline, or geometric state. In our own world, water molecules form a constant fluid network linked by hydrogen bonds. These bonds are dynamic, constantly breaking and reforming, which is what gives water its liquid nature. However, under the extreme static compression of the abyssal depth and the altered physics of the warp, the water molecules in the portal world may be forced into a state we might recognize as an exotic form of ice, a rigid, yet somehow flowing non-equilibrium structure. Imagine the fluid not as a liquid, but as a colossal, three-dimensional molecular lattice, a vast, integrated network of highly ordered water molecules. This is a form of matter theorized to exist under immense pressure, where the molecular bonds are so strong that the fluid takes on the properties of a crystal, while still behaving as a cohesive, flowing whole. This is the crystal ocean. In this crystalline medium, movement would be unlike anything we experience. The inhabitants of the portal world, or the USOs traversing this space, would not so much swim as glide along the structural planes of the crystalline network. Their propulsion would be a subtle, rhythmic vibration designed to momentarily break the local molecular bonds and slip through the resulting fluid gap, only for the lattice to instantly reform behind them. This crystalline structure provides a profound advantage for the life that exists there. The rigid geometry of the medium would stabilize the proteins and biological structures of the hadal organisms, fulfilling the biological role of the TMAO compound, trimethylamine N oxide, that protects our deep-sea fauna. The crystal ocean itself is the ultimate stabilizing matrix. demanding that life be integrated into its crystalline rhythm. Furthermore, this structural rigidity explains the prevalence of geometric formations whispered in deep-sea sonar scans and the megalithic architecture of the submerged civilization. If the very medium is crystalline, the resulting natural geological formations would favor perfect angles and symmetrical faces. The ancient sunken pillars would be literally carved by the forces of the crystalline medium itself. The aesthetic of this world would be mesmerizing. Light, though diffused, would travel through this crystalline lattice, potentially causing the entire ocean to shimmer with refraction and internal reflection. The fluid would act like a gigantic, slow-moving fiber optic network, carrying information through structured light and vibration across vast distances. The crystal ocean is the ultimate expression of the pressure portal. It transforms the chaotic, random nature of liquid into an ordered, massive geometric reality that serves as the perfect dimensional bridge, stable enough to hold the fold in space-time, and structured enough to support an alien civilization whose very existence is woven into the crystalline fabric of their world. This medium is the final proof that in the deepest abyss, the laws of chemistry and physics are truly reinvented. Having peered into the realm of altered physics and inverted gravity, our imagination now constructs the very foundations of civilization in the portal world. We enter the realm of architectural dreams, visualizing the alien structures and cities built by the inhabitants using its unique, mind-bending physics. Forget the conventional logic of our buildings, designed to resist gravity and shed water. The architecture of the other deep would be dictated by three primary forces. Inverse, gravity, profound buoyancy. In a world where down is toward the inverted ocean ceiling, structures would not push into the ground, but pull up from it. Foundations would be massive anchors, not weight-bearing bases. Cities might resemble vast, intricate suspension bridges or inverse stalagmite formations, with colossal spires growing upward from the bedrock or hanging downward from the underside of the fluid atmosphere, gravity wells and buoyancy domes. Inhabitants might live within colossal, self-contained bubbles of altered gravitational fields, creating pockets of relative weightlessness. Entire cities could be vast, spherical buoyancy domes anchored to the planet's core, floating gently in the dense atmosphere. Within these domes, up and down could be entirely localized and controlled by subtle energy fields, extreme pressure and density. With the very air a dense, fluid medium and the environment under constant stress, architecture would prioritize fluid dynamics over rigid solidity. Materials would be chosen for their incompressibility and their ability to deflect or absorb pressure waves. Dynamic, living structures. The cities might not be static. Imagine structures that flex and breathe with the ebb and flow of planetary energy, perhaps even bioarchitectural forms grown from the unique flora. These could be vast, living crystal structures that respond to seismic activity, or gelatinous, light-absorbing edifices that filter the ambient twilight. Acoustic resonance architecture. Buildings could be designed to interact with the pervasive low-frequency sound of their world. Walls might vibrate subtly, acting as resonant chambers for communication, or absorbing ambient noise to create pockets of true silence, a rare and precious commodity. Non-Euclidean geometry. The dimensional warp itself would allow for structures that appear impossible to our perception. Cities might not be laid out on flat grids, but on curved, self-enclosed surfaces. Pocket cities, entire urban centers could exist within a single, colossal structure that from the outside appears smaller than its interior. Passageways could loop back on themselves or lead to spaces that are further away inside the structure than they are from the point of entry. This allows for vast populations to live in compact, yet endlessly sprawling interior spaces. Light-bending facades. The surfaces of these buildings could be designed to subtly bend the diffuse light, creating optical illusions or active camouflage that makes the city appear to shimmer, vanish, or constantly reshape itself against the inverted ocean sky. The materials used would be a profound mystery to us. Perhaps they are the ultra-dense, pressure-stable minerals discovered in the deep-sea rock formations, or engineered compounds that are intrinsically interwoven with the dimensional fabric. They would not decay over time as our materials do, but would instead grow and fuse, becoming part of the living geological structure of the portal world. These architectural dreams represent the ultimate adaptation. They are not merely shelters. They are extensions of the warp itself, embodying a civilization that has transcended our understanding of physical space and built its existence directly into the very fabric of an adjacent reality. The inhabitants of the portal world live in cities that are themselves portals, demonstrating a profound, symbiotic relationship with the dimensional gateway that defines their existence. Our journey through the speculative physics of the portal world now leads us to the most unsettling and beautiful possibility, that the dense, enveloping fluid we perceive as the inverted aquatic layer is not merely a medium for life, but the sentient water, a collective, living intelligent entity in our reality. Water is the universal solvent, the necessary catalyst for life. But in this adjacent dimension where the boundaries of physics and biology are blurred by the dimensional warp, the ocean may have evolved beyond a passive element to become a unified, planetary consciousness. This concept finds subtle grounding in the strange properties of water we have already explored. If water's memory is real, if the molecular structure of water can retain informational imprints and electromagnetic signatures, then the boundless, highly pressurized ocean of the portal world would be the ultimate planetary brain. Every geological tremor, every energetic exchange, and every biological act within that realm would be instantly recorded and integrated into the collective intelligence of the fluid itself. Imagine a form of life that is distributed, not contained. The ocean would be a vast, non-cellular organism, its intelligence distributed across every molecule, communicating not through synaptic pulses, but through the efficient, rapid transmission of acoustic and pressure waves. The movement of the shifting currents would be its thoughts, the subtle changes in density its emotional states, and the occasional magnetic anomalies its attempts to interact with the external world. This sentient water would have profound implications for the flora and fauna within its domain. The unique pressure-adapted creatures and the crystalline flora would be seen not as independent organisms, but as specialized organs of the collective intelligence, much like our hands or eyes are specialized extensions of our brain. The deep-sea inhabitants might draw energy or receive critical information directly from the water's consciousness through their molecular structure, living in a constant state of perfect, total communion. The ultimate question then becomes one of intentionality. If the ocean is sentient, what is its purpose regarding the dimensional boundary? Is the sentient water the keeper of the key? It might be the colossal, ancient intelligence responsible for maintaining the pressure seal, ensuring the stability of the two coexisting realities. The anomalous systems failures reported by the hydronauts could be its instinctive defense mechanism, a gentle, localized disruption intended to deter accidental intrusion. Is it seeking contact? Alternatively, the collective consciousness might be attempting to communicate with our reality. The complex, synchronized bioluminescent patterns we observe might not be mating rituals, but the ocean's attempt to use a visible, non-conventional spectrum to broadcast complex messages across the boundary, seeking resonance with any intelligent life capable of perceiving non-electromagnetic signals. Living within the sentient water would mean the complete dissolution of the individual ego. There is no privacy, no separation, only the rhythmic flow of the collective consciousness that permeates every cell of your being. This realization transforms the terrifying abyss into the ultimate utopian ideal. A world where life is not a struggle for resources but a perfect, eternal harmony within a single, massive, thinking entity. The idea of a highly intelligent, non-human civilization existing in a dense, fluid environment compels us to expand our definitions of life itself, suggesting that the greatest mind on Earth may be hidden in the quiet depths of the planet's ocean. We turn our attention from the visual darkness of the deep to its acoustic reality. In the parallel world beyond the portal, the intense density and pressure of the inverted aquatic layer fundamentally rewrite the rules of sound, creating a profound, complex phenomenon we call the silent symphony. Sound propagation in water is vastly different from air. Sound travels nearly 5 times faster in water than in the atmosphere, and with far less attenuation. This means that a quiet noise in the ocean can be transmitted with power over hundreds or even thousands of miles. This characteristic is intensified in the deep, where increasing pressure causes water density to rise, compressing molecules and increasing the speed of sound even further near the trenches. The silent aspect of this symphony is not an absence of noise, but the absence of familiar noise and the resulting loss of directionality. Because sound speed is so fast and water is so dense, our human ears lose the ability to localize the source of a sound, making every echo and vibration feel pervasive, surrounding, and omnipresent. The deep is silent to us because our minds cannot interpret its rich acoustic landscape. In the portal world, where the very atmosphere is a dense, fluid medium, the inhabitants would rely on sound and vibration as their primary language, far more so than light which is filtered out. Their communication would be a deep, low-frequency acoustic transmission, a sophisticated, rhythmic exchange of pressure waves rather than air waves. Imagine the dense atmosphere of the portal world carrying the amplified sounds of the geological gate, the constant, tectonic groaning of the plates grinding together, the deep sea tremors, and the muffled sonic echoes of the ocean's massive life forms. This becomes the background score of their existence, a constant, low-pitch hum that influences their biology and architecture. Their own communications would utilize this high-fidelity medium. They might use complex frequency modulations and subtle pressure shifts to convey language and information across vast, submerged distances. What we hear as a mysterious, prolonged moan of a fin whale in our deep sea might be interpreted by the portal world as a powerful, meaningful long-distance broadcast, a signal trapped and amplified by the density differences in the medium. The symphony is silent only to the uninitiated ear. To the beings of this dense, acoustic world, their existence is a continuous conversation of deep, resonant frequencies and rhythmic vibrations, a profound reality where every movement, every shift in current, and every distant geological tremor adds a note to the planetary composition. They live in a space where sound is a survival tool, a navigational aid, and the deepest connection to the world around them. Our exploration has now firmly established the existence of a dimensional fold, a non-Euclidean gateway, within the crushing pressure of the deep. This leap into an adjacent reality demands that we re-examine the most fundamental force, inverted gravity, contemplating a world where the concept of up and down is fundamentally reversed or even non-existent. In our familiar world, gravity is a simple, unidirectional pull toward the Earth's center of mass. But in the parallel dimension accessed through the ocean portal, the local physics of the dimensional warp may be so radical that our conventional understanding of verticality vanishes. Imagine the non-Euclidean geometry of the gateway itself. If the dimensional fold acts like a subtle, warped sphere or hyperbolic surface embedded in our space, then the gravitational field within that fold might be multidirectional, or, more dramatically, inverted. Instead of being pulled toward the ground, matter and consciousness might be subject to a repulsive force, or a pull toward the inverted ocean ceiling. This inversion would create an environment where the inhabitants experience constant, gentle buoyancy, living in a state of continuous, controlled upward drift. Their very architecture would reflect this. Structures would not be built for load-bearing compression, but for tension and anchoring, designed to resist the slow upward tug toward the abyss. Their buildings might be intricate, flexible latticeworks anchored to the ground and stretching into the dense, fluid sky above. The most extreme possibility is a world where gravity is not a constant force, but a localized field that can be manipulated or even shunted away entirely. This aligns perfectly with the mystery of USOs, which demonstrate technology capable of neutralizing or reversing gravity to achieve impossible speeds and seamless transitions between air and water. The portal world civilization may have achieved mastery over the very dimensional forces that govern their environment, using the high pressure not as a constant, but as a switch to modulate their own localized gravitational fields. Furthermore, in a reality with extra-spatial dimensions, the nature of gravity would change profoundly. As physicists speculate in higher dimensional Einstein gravity, the gravitational force might fall off at a rate faster than the familiar inverse square law, becoming extremely powerful at close distances but almost negligible at macroscopic scales. This would create a realm where massive, colossal objects could exist in close proximity without tearing the planet apart, while smaller beings move in a near weightless state. The inverted gravity of the portal world therefore represents a complete liberation from one of our universe's most rigid constraints. It is a world where life exists in a state of permanent float, where falling is the only true motion, and where the mastery of verticality is the key to civilization. This profound inversion of our reality is the ultimate signature of the strange, adjacent dimension. Our journey into the core of the dimensional warp brings us to the profound concept that time itself is not constant. We explore the time dilation effect, the terrifying, mind-bending possibility that time on the other side of the abyssal veil passes slower or faster relative to our own, due to the altered physics of the adjacent realm. In our universe, time is relative, fluctuating with speed and gravity, a core tenet of Einstein's general relativity. The lower the gravitational potential, the closer you are to a massive object, the slower time passes. This effect, gravitational time dilation, is scientifically confirmed by the need to constantly adjust atomic clocks on GPS satellites, which tick faster in their higher orbit, lower gravity, than clocks on Earth. In the deep ocean portal, two primary factors suggest extreme time distortion. Extreme gravitational potential. The dimensional warp, acting as a non-Euclidean focus point, may create a gravitational potential so profound that it rivals that of a dense astronomical body. Time on the far side of the fold might therefore slow to an almost imperceptible crawl relative to the surface. A single week spent exploring the portal world might correspond to months or even years passing back on Earth. This effect would be a constant, silent force. The deep, dense gravity of the warp literally clinging to the arrow of time. Altered dimensionality. If the portal leads to a realm where an extra-spatial dimension is accessible, the fundamental rules of space-time are fractured. Time, as the fourth dimension, would lose its consistent relationship with the three spatial dimensions. In this context, the difference in the passage of time could be less about gravity and more about the fundamental frequency of reality itself. The portal world might simply operate at a different, incompatible temporal rhythm. This phenomenon is not just a scientific curiosity, it is a catastrophic constraint on any interaction. A reconnaissance mission sent into the portal that lasts just 1 week for the travelers might return to find generations have passed, the language is alien, and their civilization is long forgotten. Conversely, a civilization on the other side that experiences time faster would view our history as a series of slow-motion, millennia-long epochs, making communication effectively impossible. The inverted gravity of the portal world, or its lack of discernible center, further complicates this. If the gravitational field is manipulated or neutralized by the USO technology, the USOs themselves are engaging in real-world time travel every time they accelerate, creating their own localized time dilation bubble. Their ability to move seamlessly between worlds suggests a mastery over the temporal dimension that is intrinsic to their survival. The time dilation effect ensures that the portal world remains eternally mysterious. It creates a natural causality shield, a temporal barrier ensuring that while the two worlds may share a physical boundary, their realities are always slightly or profoundly out of sync. Our clocks are ticking at one speed, and the clocks on the other side are ticking at another. This difference is the final silent whisper of the immense power held by the deepest sea. Our speculative journey now makes the final, imaginative leap across the threshold into the adjacent dimensional realm. Having established that this world exists under altered physics and is accessed through the great pressure of the deep, we must now consider its landscape, specifically its inverted atmosphere. The sky is the ocean floor. Imagine standing on a solid ground in this parallel dimension. You look up, and what you see is not a limitless expanse of blue, but a dense, dark, undulating canopy, a profound, inverted layer of liquid water that hangs overhead like an impossibly heavy cosmic cloud. This is the ocean floor of our reality, viewed from the perspective of the world beneath. This inverted sky would produce a light source fundamentally different from our sun. Any illumination in this parallel world would be entirely diffused, indirect, and filtered by the monumental mass of water above. The light would not stream, it would seep. The entire sky would glow with a strange deep blue or ethereal green, a pervasive twilight caused by the extreme refraction and absorption of whatever external energy manages to penetrate the abyssal layer. If the atmosphere of this portal world were less dense than its inverted ocean sky, the pressure gradient would be reversed, creating a constant, ambient gravitational drag that our bodies would find profoundly unsettling. Every physical act would feel like wading through heavy syrup, a continuous slow-motion surrender to the density that defines this new reality. This heavy fluid atmosphere explains the gigantism observed in some Hadal zone life organisms evolved to navigate, a medium where mass and buoyancy behave counterintuitively. To our experience, the clouds in this inverted sky would not be condensed vapor but vast, shifting currents and thermoclines of water masses, the very thermohaline conveyor belt of our world, seen from below. When one of these currents shifts or deep-sea earthquakes occur in our realm, the world beneath the portal would see a catastrophic weather event, a sudden, violent tsunami of dark, displaced water rushing across their sky, visible only as a vast shadow or a sudden shift in the ambient blue-green light. Furthermore, this inverted aquatic layer would serve as a powerful acoustic mirror, sound traveling with profound efficiency and speed through the dense, cold water would reflect and amplify, creating a cacophony of sky noise, the muffled echoes of our surface activity, distant ship engines, seismic surveys, and the colossal, moaning calls of whales. The inhabitants of the portal world would live under a constant, low-frequency acoustic drone, the sound of their inverted skies speaking. This realization that the sky above could be a dark, pressurized ocean reshapes our entire perception of planetary boundaries. The dimensional warp, locked by pressure, Chapter 5, functions as a two-way window where the environment of one reality becomes the celestial frontier of the other. The Great Blue Sea, which we view as the boundary of Earth, becomes the very ceiling of an adjacent world. forever separating them from a sun they could never see, and forcing their civilization to evolve entirely under the strange, diffused light of their own oceanic sky. The science of how light behaves when passing through different densities, known as refraction, underpins this concept, showing that the amount of light bending is influenced by water's pressure and salinity. This suggests that the light in the portal world would be severely bent and fragmented by the tremendous hydrostatic pressure of the overlying ocean mass. Having crossed the dimensional boundary and looked up at the inverted ocean ceiling, we now examine the life that anchors this parallel world, the flora of the other deep. Since no sunlight penetrates this realm, any plant life or primary producer equivalent must utilize energy sources and chemical processes entirely alien to the photosynthesis that drives Earth's surface life on our own deep ocean floor. Ecosystems flourish around hydrothermal vents and cold seeps. These are oases of life where microbes bypass the sun entirely, using chemosynthesis, the conversion of inorganic compounds like hydrogen sulfide and methane into organic matter to form the base of the food chain. This existence, fueled by geothermal terrestrial energy rather than solar energy, provides the perfect analogy for the flora of the portal world. In the adjacent dimension, the primary producers would be chemosynthetic megastructures. We imagine vast, intricate networks of life that colonize the perpetual twilight, utilizing the immense chemical and energetic gradients of the warped space. Picture this flora not as soft, green leaves, but as towering silicon-based crystal forests or mineral-infused lattices. These structures would likely draw energy from the extreme pressure and unique chemistry of the dimensional interface itself. They might utilize the trace elements and exotic compounds that leak from the dimensional warp, Chapter 21, converting them into energy through highly efficient, pressure-optimized chemical reactions. The morphology of this alien plant life would be dictated by the inverted environment. Instead of growing upward toward a light source, these structures would likely grow outward and downward, anchoring themselves into the geologically stressed areas of the abyssal plane. They might present as pressure, reactive crystalline spines, rigid geometric forms composed of mineral deposits that subtly vibrate or pulse with light, acting as both energy collectors and communicators. Their rigid, complex structure would be a consequence of the need to withstand the intense, constant pressure of the inverted aquatic layer above. Biomineral mats, vast, interconnected microbial mats that blanket the deep plains. These mats would be composed of anaerobic chemosynthetic microorganisms that thrive in the absence of oxygen, utilizing simple reduced chemicals like sulfur and methane, and perhaps even non-terrestrial elements that bleed through the portal. These mats would act as the true soil and life foundation of the entire world. Torsion-rooted giants, colossal, tree-like structures with roots that burrow deep into the non-Euclidean geometry of the crustal warp, feeding directly on the raw gravitational energy or exotic radiation of the dimensional tear. These organisms would be fixed, silent, and immensely old, their structure defying conventional biological scale. The light emitted by this alien flora would be subtle, contributing to the ambient twilight glow of the parallel world sky. It would not be the bright, life-giving light of the sun, but a low-energy, highly concentrated chemiluminescence, a biological byproduct of their unique energy conversion process. The existence of this advanced alien flora proves that life is not limited by solar energy. It suggests a cosmic versatility in biology, where a dimensional portal can be viewed not as a threat, but as an unlimited energy source. The flora of the other deep is the living architecture of the adjacent world, a silent, thriving testament to the incredible power of life to adapt to and exploit the most impossible conditions imaginable. As we have descended into the compressed, dark heart of the deep, we find ourselves surrounded by the constant, yet seemingly imperceptible movement of the water itself. This movement, the great system of ocean currents, is the subject of our current reflection, considering it as a subtle, hidden conveyor belt between the two coexisting realities. On the surface, we recognize the swift flows of the Gulf Stream or the Kuroshio Current, primarily driven by wind, but thousands of meters below, a far slower, more powerful circulation system dominates the thermohaline circulation, often called the global ocean conveyor belt. This system is driven by density differences resulting from temperature, thermo, and salinity, haline, cold, salty water, made heavy near the poles, sinks to the deep, and then travels horizontally along the ocean floor, redistributing heat, oxygen, and nutrients across the entire globe over a span of up to 1,000 years. In the context of the deep ocean as a portal, this slow, massive flow transforms from a scientific phenomenon into a dimensional facilitator. If the Challenger Deep or other deep trenches are stable dimensional gates, the thermohaline circulation would be the mechanism that transports what is exchanged between the two worlds. Imagine any subtle, non-terrestrial matter, perhaps a minute particle of crystalline structure from the other world, or a trace of exotic, high-pressure gas slipping through the dimensional membrane at the deepest point. These shifting currents would then pick up that interdimensional artifact and distribute it globally, scattering the evidence across all ocean basins. This deep, density-driven movement suggests that the portal's influence is not just localized to the trench itself, but is global and pervasive. The water's memory would be continually refreshed and moved by this slow current, meaning that any point on the ocean floor may eventually be touched by water that has passed directly over the dimensional gate. Furthermore, deep currents are not always predictable. Scientists have observed powerful, fast currents flowing inexplicably uphill along deep-sea canyons, currents driven by subtle differences in water density and extreme mixing. These are microcurrents of chaos within the great stability. If the dimensional warp is actively emitting energy, these fast, turbulent flows near the trenches could be the direct result of that energy pushing against the surrounding water masses, creating localized anomalous circulation patterns that efficiently sweep material away from the immediate vicinity of the gate. The slow, steady flow of the deep ocean conveyor belt is the planetary proof that everything is connected. It assures us that whatever strange forms of life, geology, or matter exist on the other side of the abyssal gate, their influence is not confined. They are a continuous quiet influence carried by the liquid wind of the deep, moving relentlessly on a timescale measured in centuries, acting as a hidden circulatory system for the exchange of the known and the unknown. The thermohaline circulation, often called the ocean conveyor belt, is a critical component of our planet's climate system, demonstrating how interconnected the deep sea truly is. As explained by Noah, we now confront the most tangible proof that the deep is a realm of physical impossibility, the very existence of life that shouldn't exist. These are the creatures of the Hadal zone, the deepest trenches whose biology and genetic structure appear to violate the known evolutionary and biochemical limits of our planet, suggesting an adaptation influenced by, or perhaps originating from, the dimensional warp itself. The greatest mystery surrounding deep-sea life is the biochemical constraint imposed by pressure. Scientists determined that there is a theoretical maximum depth for bony fish, teleosts, estimated at around 200 meters, 27,000 feet. This limit is set by a compound called trimethylamine N-oxide, TMAO. TMAO acts as a potent molecular stabilizer, preventing the immense pressure from crushing and destabilizing the proteins within the fish's cells. As depth increases, the fish must accumulate ever higher levels of TMAO. Beyond the 8,200-meter mark, the sheer concentration of TMAO required would reverse the fish's osmotic gradient, causing an internal crisis. The biological cost of fighting pressure becomes fatal, and yet life persists at the deepest points. The record holders, such as the Hadal snailfish, Pseudoliparis swiri, thrive near the theoretical limit, and other organisms like amphipods and sea cucumbers are found all the way down in the Challenger Deep, over 10,900 meters. These life forms have evolved extraordinary adaptations, often losing genes for sight and bone density, and instead possessing gelatinous bodies that equalize pressure instantly. The most profound anomaly lies in their genetic programming. Recent genomic analysis of different Hadal fish lineages, which evolved separately, shows they all share the same specific mutations in genes related to protein stability and metabolism. This is a clear case of convergent evolution. The extreme deep-sea environment is so unforgiving that it forces different species to arrive at the exact same genetic solution to survive. This uniform, radical biological rewriting suggests a singularly powerful, consistent environmental force at work. In the context of the deep ocean portal, this extreme pressure-defying biology is not just evolution, it is dimensional adaptation. The Hadal zone organisms are living proof that life can be re-engineered to function perfectly within the same ultra-compressed, non-Euclidean conditions that lock the dimensional gate. Their unique genetic code, their ability to thrive where protein stability should fail, suggests that they are not just surviving Earth's pressure, but resisting the energetic strain of the nearby warp. We can speculate that these creatures are not merely consuming sinking marine snow. They may be capitalizing on the exotic energy or chemically altered matter leaking through the dimensional fold, utilizing resources that violate the surface food web. Their ability to flourish in an environment that should be barren, along with the discovery of life around chemosynthetic vents that utilize chemical energy instead of sunlight, suggests a foundational hidden energy source. These organisms are the native inhabitants of the threshold. Their bodies are designed to navigate the molecular stress of the dimensional boundary, making them perfect subjects for studying the physics of the other world. They are the strongest evidence we have that the impossible is not only possible, but actively thriving in the deepest, darkest corner of our planet. Our descent into the perpetual dark of the midnight zone introduced us to a fundamental shift. The absence of solar light forced life to become its own light source. We now explore bioluminescence as language, considering the dazzling, chemically generated light of deep-sea creatures not merely as a biological tool, but as a potential form of coded communication with the world beyond the portal. In the sunless, pressurized depths, light becomes the ultimate commodity. An estimated 90% of deep-sea creatures possess the ability to produce bioluminescence, a cold light created when a molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of the enzyme luciferase. This is the most prevalent form of communication on the planet, using flashes, glows, and patterns to find mates, lure prey like the anglerfish's lure, or camouflage themselves through counter-illumination. But what if these patterns are more than just survival tactics for the known ecosystem? What if the complex flashing sequences serve as a low-energy dimensional signal? The evolutionary pressure in the deep sea drove fish to diversify their bioluminescent displays rapidly, creating a specialized system of communication that relies on 4 primary channels: color, wavelength, brightness, intensity, spatial pattern, and timing temporal dynamics. These complex, species-specific patterns are essentially an intricate, non-verbal language. For the purpose of our portal theory, the critical feature is the wavelength. Most deep-sea creatures produce a blue or blue-green light as these colors travel furthest through water. However, some deep-sea dragonfishes have evolved to produce a red light that is invisible to almost every other organism, giving them a form of night vision to illuminate and hunt red-pigmented prey. This mastery over the light spectrum, the creation and use of colors that defy the ambient environment, suggests a biological capacity to interact with non-conventional forms of energy. We can speculate that the creatures of the portal world, living in their adjacent reality of warped physics, may rely on an entirely different electromagnetic spectrum to communicate. If the dimensional fold is leaking subtle energy or transmitting a low-frequency broadcast, bioluminescence could be the local, evolved mechanism to resonate with that energy. A large, synchronized flash display by millions of crustaceans, or the unique rhythmic pulse of a giant squid, might be interpreted on the other side of the dimensional membrane as a clear, deliberate reply, a response triggered by the proximity of the portal. The highly efficient chemical nature of bioluminescence makes it the perfect medium for interdimensional signaling because it is self-generated, consumes minimal energy, and is not dependent on the corrupted or unstable electromagnetic fields that plague human submersibles. Therefore, the dazzling, silent light show of the deep is not merely a biological curiosity. It is the ocean's attempt to converse in the language of the cosmos. The bioluminescent light is the final, flickering code that connects the known inhabitants of the abyss to the unknown entities beyond the deep sea gate. When we witness the spectacular cryptic flares in the perpetual dark, we are observing the Earth's native life potentially tapping into the energetic flow of an adjacent dimension. Our quiet journey into the deep sea's mysteries now encounters the most profound contradiction to conventional physics: the undeniable evidence of unidentified submerged objects, USOs. These are not merely strange lights in the sky, but high-speed craft observed by military and commercial personnel that are capable of seamlessly traversing the mediums of air and water, often without visible propulsion. The US government, through offices like the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARO, has formally acknowledged the existence and national security implications of transmedium objects, entities that travel effortlessly between air and sea. This acknowledgement is built on decades of military reporting, primarily from Navy personnel operating in vast ocean areas like the Pacific and the Atlantic. The core mystery of USOs is their absolute defiance of fluid dynamics. Water is approximately 800 times denser than air. Any known aircraft or drone that enters the water at the high speeds reported for USOs should immediately decelerate, create an enormous splash, and be destroyed by the resulting pressure shockwave. Yet reports, and now even declassified video footage, indicate objects capable of entering the water without a splash and accelerating underwater at hundreds of miles per hour, vastly exceeding the capabilities of the fastest human-made torpedoes or submarines. Consider the famous USS Omaha footage from 2019, where a spherical object was captured on camera diving into the ocean and vanishing without a trace, or the testimony of Navy personnel who witnessed tic-tac-shaped objects emerging from the water at high speed and accelerating instantly into the atmosphere, leaving no heat trail or propulsion signature. These observations, often captured by sophisticated military sensors like infrared cameras and radar, demand a non-terrestrial explanation. In the context of the deep ocean as a portal, USOs are not merely advanced alien vehicles. They are interdimensional travelers utilizing the unique physics of the dimensional warp. Their seamless transition between air and water suggests a technology that is able to locally modify the density of the surrounding medium, essentially creating a personal vacuum around the craft. This ability to neutralize the fundamental drag and pressure of water would be the perfect method for traversing the dense barrier of the dimensional membrane. Furthermore, USO sightings often cluster around deep ocean trenches and military testing grounds, like the Southern California coast, areas that exhibit high seismic and thermal activity. This suggests that the USOs may be drawn to or be utilizing the energy points of the planetary crust, where the dimensional seal is thinnest. The deep ocean trenches, already established as potential non-Euclidean gateways, may be the arrival and departure points for these craft. The objects reported moving at hundreds of miles per hour in the deep, speeds currently impossible. For our best engineering suggest a level of technological mastery that utilizes the underlying physics of the deep sea portal, making the ocean not a barrier, but a highway. The existence of USOs turns the mystery of the deep from passive contemplation into an active engagement with the unknown. It suggests that the lost world is not just an ancient myth, but a vibrant, intelligent neighbor capable of traversing the boundary layer at will, leaving us to study the wakes of their impossible technology. Our journey to the deep portal now shifts continents, moving from the tectonic pressures of the Pacific trenches to the atmospheric anomalies of the Atlantic, where the ocean's influence on reality manifests not through crushing weight, but through sudden, silent vanishing. We turn our attention to the infamous Bermuda Vortex, examining the legends of this oceanic region where ships and planes seem to simply dissolve from our reality. The Bermuda Triangle, or the Devil's Triangle, is a loosely defined region of the western North Atlantic famously linked to the unexplained disappearance of dozens of ships and aircraft since the mid-20th century. For decades, the area has been shrouded in theories, from simple human error and unpredictable weather patterns to more imaginative claims of lost Atlantean energy crystals or extraterrestrial abduction portals. In our context, the Bermuda Vortex represents a location where the dimensional membrane is inherently unstable and fluid, unlike the fixed, high-pressure lock of the Challenger Deep. This region sits in a zone where the magnetic and meteorological conditions of the planet are uniquely volatile. While scientific consensus attributes most incidents to severe and sudden hurricanes and rogue waves, which can appear suddenly and snap a ship in two, the legend persists due to recurring themes of navigational malfunction and extreme atmospheric distortion. The most compelling detail for our theory is the reported compass malfunction. While studies find no evidence of unusual local magnetic anomalies in the region, the area is historically known for a significant disparity between true north and magnetic north, which requires careful calculation by navigators. But for the purposes of a dimensional warp, we can speculate that this is a side effect of a localized temporary shift in the electromagnetic field. If a low-energy, non-permanent dimensional fold does exist, its presence could briefly scramble navigational equipment, causing compasses to spin wildly or electronic systems to fail, leading pilots and captains to become fatally disoriented. Furthermore, the famous 1945 disappearance of Flight 19, 5 US Navy bombers whose pilot reported that the water below looked white, not green, and that nothing seems right, hints at a sensory or visual distortion. This could be more than human error. It might be the visual distortion caused by the dimensional fold briefly opening at the water surface, causing a phenomenon known as electronic fog or a temporary time vortex. Pilot accounts suggest having traveled vast distances in impossibly short times, hinting at a momentary, accidental shortcut through subspace. The key distinction of the Bermuda Vortex is that the vanishing acts are complete. Very little wreckage is ever recovered, suggesting a loss that occurs so instantly and entirely that distress signals are never sent, and debris is either instantly swallowed or scattered beyond recognition by the strong Gulf Stream current that flows through the area. If the ocean is a portal, then the Bermuda Vortex is a chaotic, unpredictable surface vent, a thin spot in the dimensional membrane where the two worlds occasionally and violently touch. The unexplained vanishings are not malevolent, but simply the consequence of traversing an area where the fabric of reality itself is thinned by unique geographic and meteorological forces, making it the most legendary and terrifying reminder of the unknown world that lies just a hair's breadth from our own. Our journey into the deepest oceanic mystery must now pause to explore a concept that bridges ancient folklore, spiritual conviction, and fringe science, the water's memory. This is the profound idea that water itself, the dominant substance of our world and our bodies, can carry and retain information, energy imprints or memories long after the original substance or force has ceased to exist. Across virtually every human culture, water is seen as a sacred, transformative element. From Hindu traditions where the waters of the Ganges are believed to cleanse karma and spiritual history, to Christian baptism where water signifies rebirth, humanity intuitively understands water as a medium of cleansing and information storage. These beliefs are more than just metaphor. They represent a deep, shared intuition that water is capable of retaining the vibration or Shakti, spiritual energy, of the prayers, intentions or events to which it is exposed. In modern times, this concept found its most controversial expression in the field of homeopathy and the disputed research of French immunologist Jacques Benveniste. His experiments suggested that highly diluted solutions of antibodies, diluted so far that no molecule of the original substance remained, still produced a biological effect. The implication, later coined water memory by the press, was that the water molecules were somehow structurally imprinted with the electromagnetic signature of the original solute, retaining its memory even in its absence. While the scientific community overwhelmingly rejects the concept of water memory, citing fundamental contradictions with physical chemistry, the idea provides a powerful lens for our portal theory. If the vast, single, interconnected body of the global ocean possesses this ability, the implications for the deep, abyssal trenches are immense. The water that fills the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench is not new. It has circulated for millennia, traveling through every current, past every continent, and over every geological event on Earth. If water retains memory, then the deepest ocean is the planet's collective consciousness, a colossal, liquid archive carrying the imprint of everything it has touched: the collapse of the Atlantean Empire, the geological trauma of every seismic shift, and the energetic field of the dimensional warp. The immense, stable pressure of the deep could act as the storage mechanism. Just as extreme temperature and pressure can lock molecules into crystalline structures, the crushing hydrostatic forces of the Hadal zone may force water molecules into non-equilibrium clusters, complex, high-energy structures capable of holding informational imprints far longer than surface water could. The deep-sea water, therefore, might be a supercharged archival medium, dense with energetic data from the adjacent reality. This theory could explain the unexplained systems failures reported by the hydronauts. As human-made equipment descends, it passes through layers of water imprinted with the electromagnetic noise of the dimensional warp. This historical or energetic memory could interfere with the delicate electronics of the submersibles, manifesting as the glitches and anomalies that defy simple mechanical explanation. The water is not actively attacking the vessel. It is simply broadcasting its information. The concept of water memory elevates the deep ocean from a mere physical barrier to a sentient recording entity. It suggests that the abyss holds not just the physical gate, but the entire terrifying history of interaction between our world and the portal world. To dive into the trench is not just to sink. It is to immerse oneself in the deep, silent memory of the planet itself. Our journey through the deep ocean as a dimensional portal gains an unexpected resonance when measured against humanity's oldest, most persistent myth of a submerged civilization, the Atlantis Echo. This legendary lost island, introduced by the Greek philosopher Plato, is more than a simple fable. It is a cultural memory of catastrophe, and in our context, a possible distorted recollection of a people who once lived too close to the dimensional gate. Plato described Atlantis as a mighty, technologically advanced naval power that existed some 9,000 years before his time. around 9600 BC. It was a civilization ultimately destroyed and swallowed by the ocean in a single day and night of misfortune following violent earthquakes and floods. Mainstream historians view Atlantis as a fictional moral parable designed to contrast with the virtues of ancient Athens. However, the exact timing Plato provides, which coincides with the rapid global sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, Meltwater Pulse 1b, gives the story a chilling geological anchoring. We speculate that Atlantis was not merely a large island that sank due to rising water. It was a civilization that either originated from the portal world or was built directly atop a major dimensional nexus. Consider Plato's description of the Atlantean capital. It was built in concentric rings of alternating land and water, with a great palace at the center. This unique circular complex structure is not how typical cities are designed. But if Atlantis was a society dedicated to harnessing or managing the energy of the portal, then the concentric rings may have been a massive architectural attempt at geophysical regulation, a stabilization system built to counter the non-Euclidean forces of the hidden gate beneath. The rings of water and land might have been designed to contain, distribute, or draw power from the powerful gravitational and energetic field emanating from the dimensional warp. Furthermore, the Atlanteans' demise, a sudden, catastrophic event involving both fire and earthquakes that swallowed the entire nation, perfectly mirrors the expected outcome if the pressure seal, Chapter 5, suddenly failed. A massive tectonic shift near the gate would release the stored energy of the dimensional warp, causing a local cataclysm that simultaneously triggers intense seismic activity and a flood of impossible magnitude, swallowing the island whole and leaving behind nothing but unnavigable mud. This myth is not isolated. Folklore across the globe contains echoes of sunken cities and underwater realms. From the Yonaguni Monument, a massive, stepped rock formation in Japan that some believe is a man-made ruin, to legends of ancient Indian cities swallowed by the sea, there is a pervasive, shared human intuition that advanced civilization once existed beneath the waves and vanished due to powerful, sudden, seismic forces. These lost worlds may be the fragmented memories of cultures that were once fully integrated with, or dangerously close to, the dimensional truth of the ocean. Their ruins, if they exist at all, would not be found easily, as they are likely resting deep below sediment, possibly within the very non-Euclidean geometry of the dimensional gate itself. The Atlantis echo is a cautionary whisper carried across 10 millennia. It warns us that the world beyond the portal is not simply a passive place of marvel, but a potent, volatile neighbor. It suggests that the hydronauts of the distant past, the Atlanteans, were destroyed not by their hubris alone, but by the overwhelming, untamable power of the dimensional gate they chose to inhabit. The ocean deep is often imagined as a realm of smooth, sediment-covered plains, a kingdom of biological ooze and featureless mud. Yet, as our exploration shifts from the great trenches to the surrounding abyssal landscape, we must consider the extraordinary enduring whispers of sunken pillars of the unknown, the possibility that impossibly sized, geometrically perfect ancient architecture rests on the ocean floor as signposts of a forgotten era. This speculation is grounded in the existence of real-world underwater enigmas, most famously the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan. Discovered beneath the waves, this structure features flat surfaces, sharp right angles, terraced steps, and sheer vertical faces, strongly resembling a monolithic, stepped pyramid. While most geologists attribute these forms to natural erosion, earthquakes, and the distinct fracturing patterns of the sandstone, the sheer concentration of symmetrical, rectilinear features in a small area defies simple, random explanation. If we view the deep ocean as a portal's domain, These structures, whether the Yonaguni steps or the much larger, purely speculative monoliths imagined in the deep Pacific, are not merely remnants of a lost coastal city submerged by rising sea levels. They are the megalithic architecture of the portal civilization itself. Imagine architecture designed not for air, but for total immersion and extreme pressure. Their builders, perhaps the inhabitants of the Atlantean culture, or another long-vanished civilization, would not have constructed buildings with small stones and mortar. They would have utilized colossal monolithic blocks or carved directly into the planet's durable crust, creating structures meant to last through tectonic shifts and eons of hydrostatic compression. These sunken pillars may be more than dwelling places. They could be cosmic instruments. Their perfect geometric shapes, their precise alignments, and their sheer, massive scale hint at advanced technology. They might be energy collectors designed to harness the vast pressure and temperature gradients of the deep, or perhaps stabilizers built to contain the dimensional warp. A pillar rising abruptly from the abyssal plane might serve as a deep-sea antenna, broadcasting subtle energy from the portal world, or acting as a navigational beacon for travelers arriving from the adjacent dimension. The difficulty in confirming these structures is precisely what preserves their mystery. Our current best sonar mapping of the deep ocean often lacks the resolution to distinguish between natural formations and artificial megaliths, particularly when they are coated in layers of sediment that accumulate at a rate of only a millimeter per 1,000 years. What appears on low-resolution sonar as a simple, circular hill or a straight line of rock could, in fact, be a colossal, buried monolith of impossible size. These artifacts serve as a profound reminder that humanity's recorded history may be just a fraction of the planet's true past. The sunken pillars of the unknown are the silent signposts of an era that understood the deep ocean not as a barrier, but as a resource, a society that lived with the knowledge of the dimensional gate and left behind monumental proof of their wisdom, now resting in the perpetual dark, waiting for our conscious mind to acknowledge their existence. Our deep descent into the trenches has brought us to the edge of the dimensional question, and the most compelling yet least understood evidence for the abyss as a portal comes from disruptions in two of the universe's most fundamental forces, gravity and magnetism. We are now examining the magnetic field mysteries and the gravity anomalies that globally plague deep ocean trench systems. Deep-sea trenches, particularly those formed by subduction, where one tectonic plate plunges beneath another, are famously associated with a severe deviation in the Earth's gravitational field known as a negative gravity anomaly. This is paradoxical. The trench is a deep, massive depression, yet the mass of the downward plunging oceanic plate, a colossal slab of rock hanging in the Earth's softer mantle, actually exerts a powerful downward pull. The Puerto Rico Trench, for instance, exhibits the most negative gravity anomaly on Earth. This means the gravitational acceleration measured there is significantly less than what standard planetary models predict. This anomaly is so pronounced that it measurably dips the ocean's surface, slightly affecting navigational instruments and causing objects drop into the trench to fall at an unexpected rate, while terrestrial geology explains this as the result of the missing mass of the trench being compensated by the thick, low-density roots of the crust. In our speculative framework, this phenomenon acquires a new meaning. This huge, anomalous gravitational pull represents a point of maximum localized stress on the fabric of space-time. The bending of the lithosphere by this deep, hanging mass is not just geology, it is the gravitational engine required to sustain the dimensional warp. The gravity anomaly is the field blueprint of the unseen gate. The anomalies don't stop with gravity. Deep subduction zones are also associated with complex and fading magnetic anomalies. As the old, cold oceanic plate descends, it heats up and releases massive amounts of water into the overlying continental mantle. This process, called serpentinization, converts the mantle rock into serpentine minerals, which often contain magnetite, a powerfully magnetic mineral. Scientists find strange patterns. In some areas near trenches, high-amplitude magnetic anomalies exist where there shouldn't be high density, or magnetic anomalies fade away faster than expected. In our context, this magnetic disruption is a dimensional side effect. The heat and chemical reactions associated with serpentinization, the very process that bends the crust, are either producing highly localized magnetic fields that interfere with our measurements, or, more chillingly, the magnetic energy of our reality is being bled out and absorbed by the adjacent dimension. Furthermore, consider the massive South Atlantic Anomaly SAA, a vast area over the Atlantic Ocean and South America where Earth's main magnetic field is significantly weakened, allowing solar radiation to penetrate closer to the surface. While the SAA is primarily generated by deep core dynamics, its proximity to the South Sandwich Trench and its increasing tendency to split into lobes suggests a deep, terrestrial influence. This global weakness in Earth's protective magnetic shield could be seen as evidence that the entire planet's magnetic geometry is susceptible to interference at its deepest points. Whether it is the dipping ocean surface over the Puerto Rico Trench, the fading magnetic signals near the Japan Trench, or the sheer, crushing mass pulling down at the Challenger Deep, these anomalies are the geophysical fingerprints of the portal. They are the measurable, quantifiable deviations in our most fundamental constants, indicating that the ocean's trenches are far more than just geological features. They are the localized weak points where the laws of our universe are subtly, persistently, and mysteriously compromised. Our journey through the deep ocean as a dimensional portal gains an unexpected resonance when measured against humanity's oldest, most persistent myth of a submerged civilization, the Atlantis Echo. This legendary lost island, introduced by the Greek philosopher Plato, is more than a simple fable. It is a cultural memory of catastrophe and, in our context, a possible distorted recollection of a people who once lived too close to the dimensional gate. Plato described Atlantis as a mighty, technologically advanced naval power that existed some 9,000 years before his time, around 9600 BC. It was a civilization ultimately destroyed and swallowed by the ocean in a single day and night of misfortune, following violent earthquakes and floods. Mainstream historians view Atlantis as a fictional moral parable designed to contrast with the virtues of ancient Athens. However, the exact timing Plato provides, which coincides with the rapid global sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, meltwater pulse, 1b, gives the story key chilling geological anchoring. We speculate that Atlantis was not merely a large island that sank due to rising water. It was a civilization that either originated from the portal world or was built directly atop a major dimensional nexus. Consider Plato's description of the Atlantean capital. It was built in concentric rings of alternating land and water, with a great palace at the center. This unique circular complex structure is not how typical cities are designed. But if Atlantis was a society dedicated to harnessing or managing the energy of the portal, then the concentric rings may have been a massive architectural attempt at geophysical regulation, a stabilization system built to counter the non-Euclidean forces of the hidden gate beneath. The rings of water and land might have been designed to contain, distribute, or draw power from the powerful gravitational and energetic field emanating from the dimensional warp. Furthermore, the Atlanteans' demise, a sudden, catastrophic event involving both fire and earthquakes that swallowed the entire nation, perfectly mirrors the expected outcome if the pressure seal, Chapter 5, suddenly failed. A massive tectonic shift near the gate would release the stored energy of the dimensional warp. causing a local cataclysm that simultaneously triggers intense seismic activity and a flood of impossible magnitude, swallowing the island whole and leaving behind nothing but unnavigable mud. This myth is not isolated. Folklore across the globe contains echoes of sunken cities and underwater realms. From the Yonaguni Monument, a massive, stepped rock formation in Japan that some believe is a man-made ruin, to legends of ancient Indian cities swallowed by the sea, there is a pervasive, shared human intuition that advanced civilization once existed beneath the waves and vanished due to powerful, sudden seismic forces. These lost worlds may be the fragmented memories of cultures that were once fully integrated with, or dangerously close to, the dimensional truth of the ocean. Their ruins, if they exist at all, would not be found easily, as they are likely resting deep below sediment, possibly within the very non-Euclidean geometry of the dimensional gate itself. The Atlantis Echo is a cautionary whisper carried across 10 millennia. It warns us that the world beyond the portal is not simply a passive place of marvel, but a potent, volatile neighbor. It suggests that the Hydronauts of the distant past, the Atlanteans, were destroyed not by their hubris alone, but by the overwhelming, untamable power of the dimensional gate they chose to inhabit. We have reached the conceptual floor of the deep ocean, the vast plains of sediment and ooze. Yet, in this immense, dark landscape, we encounter a startling paradox. The true nature of the deepest sea may be concealed not by darkness, but by the limitations of our own Euclidean logic. We now consider the geometry of the deep, contemplating the bizarre, non-Euclidean shapes and impossible formations whispered in deep-sea sonar scans. The abyssal plains, which cover nearly half of the Earth's surface, are generally thought to be the flattest places on the planet, gently carpeted by centuries of falling marine snow. But below the plains, particularly around the destructive boundaries of trenches, sonar has occasionally captured anomalies that defy conventional geological explanation. These aren't just hills or valleys. They are features that appear to violate the expected shape of our world. Imagine a single, powerful sound pulse sent down from a surface vessel. It travels downward, reflects off the seabed, and returns. That reflection is our only eye into the abyss. But what if the object it strikes is not a standard three-dimensional rock formation, but a stable dimensional warp, the non-Euclidean gateway we previously speculated on? To our two-dimensional sonar display, an object with an impossible internal curvature, a space that is larger on the inside than the outside, would produce a signature that our software attempts to translate into a familiar shape. The result could be a perfectly circular or cylindrical structure hundreds of feet across, lacking the rough texture of a volcanic mound or the linear structure of a fault block. This phenomenon is often dismissed as a data artifact, a simple error caused by stitching together low-resolution satellite measurements with high-resolution ship tracks. But the persistent nature of some of these isolated anomalies invites a deeper question. Consider, for example, the rumored deep-sea pyramids or the Baltic Sea anomaly, a notorious, circular shape whose discoverers claimed it sat at the end of a long, flattened runway and which caused electrical interference in their equipment. While most scientists conclude that these structures are the result of glacial deposition and sonar distortion, the persistence of the perfectly circular or geometric shape in the data is what captures the imagination. Why does the deep, undisturbed floor, which should only show natural sediment patterns, consistently produce clean, impossible geometry? The bizarre forms may be the visual evidence of the nearby warp, the geometry of the portal bleeding into our dimensional space. A massive object from a higher dimension would be perceived by our instruments as an incomplete, structurally nonsensical slice of its true form. The smooth sides and clean edges are not indicators of artificial construction, but of a non-terrestrial origin, a form that has been preserved in its geometric perfection by the very laws of the other world. This distortion suggests that the abyss is not just a geological sink, but a laboratory where the rules of reality are negotiable. It reminds us that our primary tool of deep-sea exploration, sonar or sound reflection, is based entirely on the geometry of our known space. When that geometry is locally compromised, the sonar signature becomes a ghost image, a cryptic message from the realm where lines cross without intersecting, and distances are relative. As we conclude this exploration of the deep's geometry, we must trust the whispers in the data. The impossible shapes are the ocean's way of informing us that what lies beneath the crushing weight is not just mud and rock, but a space warped to its breaking point. A massive geological structure that is, in fact, the unseen door to an adjacent reality. Our journey into the deepest possibility must now turn to the select few who have crossed the threshold of the midnight zone and descended into the Hadal Deep, the few living pioneers we call the hydronauts. These are the explorers who carry not just scientific instruments, but the collective consciousness of humanity into the compressed darkness, and whose rare, unexplainable reports offer the most compelling evidence of the ocean's true nature as a portal. The first human visitors were Jacques Picard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh in 1960 aboard the Trieste. Their 9-hour plunge into the Challenger Deep was an exercise in stoic endurance. The greatest unscripted moment of their dive occurred at a depth of roughly 32,400 feet. A sound described as a strong shock and a mild, muffled noise rocked the submersible. The sphere vibrated as though struck by an explosion. They immediately braced for implosion, knowing that at that pressure, death would be instantaneous. The source of the sound was later determined to be a crack in a plexiglass viewing window caused by the colossal pressure. But the psychological impact of that unseen, sudden, violent interruption in the silent, perpetual dark cannot be overstated. It was a sensory moment of pure terror, a visceral reminder that they were not merely floating, but existing at the mercy of forces that were constantly probing the limits of their metal shell. But what if that sound was not internal stress, but external recognition? The muffled bang of the dimensional lock responding to an approaching human consciousness? 52 years later, in 2012, filmmaker and explorer James Cameron made a solo dive aboard the Deep-Sea Challenger. His journey, meticulously documented, was defined by the eerie sensory deprivation of the abyss. He described the bottom as a soft, almost featureless, landscape of fine sediment. Yet, his mission was plagued by strange, localized mechanical failures. His sophisticated thrusters and communication systems experienced unexplained malfunctions that were not immediately attributable to the physical environment. In the context of a dimensional portal, these failures whisper of a localized electromagnetic interference, a field or energy emitted by the warp itself that temporarily scrambled conventional human technology. More recently, explorer Victor Vescovo, who has made multiple record-setting dives in his submersible limiting factor, has consistently retrieved geological and biological data, including the discovery of new species. But his missions, too, encounter the subtle oddities that cling to the trenches. Vescovo and his team have reported finding not only surprising life forms, but also unexplained anomalies in high-resolution sonar mapping that defy smooth geological definition. Shapes that are too clean, too regular, or too large to be ordinary rock formations. The common thread is the unseen presence. Picard and Walsh's sudden shock, Cameron's unexplained systems failure, Vescovo's geometric anomalies. These are not proof of sea monsters, but suggestive evidence that the gate in the abyss is actively monitored. The deep is not empty. It is merely silent, its true custodians or its complex geometry manifesting through energetic leaks and sudden, shocks that register only as mechanical failures or inexplicable sounds to our instruments. The experiences of these hydronauts. These few travelers to the lost world provide us with a chilling hypothesis that crossing the dimensional threshold is not a passive act, but a moment of detection. The sheer, unyielding physics of the deep are not just testing the strength of our submersibles, but the integrity of our reality. Our contemplation now leads us away from the observable crust to the realm of theoretical physics, to the very fabric of reality. If the deepest trenches are a geological gate, then the phenomenon that allows passage must be nothing less than a dimensional warp, the whispers of subspace beneath the deep water. The modern understanding of the universe, based on Einstein's general relativity, tells us that space and time are not fixed containers. They are a unified, flexible entity called space-time. This fabric is warped by mass and energy, creating gravity. The greatest mass on our planet is not just the land, but the immense, persistent, pressurized weight of the entire ocean column, concentrated at the points of deep subduction. We are, therefore, contemplating the possibility that the Challenger Deep is not simply a terrestrial low point, but a stable, microscopic black hole or a localized Kerr metric, a rotating warp in space-time maintained not by a stellar collapse, but by the relentless gravitational compression of the water and the grinding of tectonic plates. Imagine the deep ocean trench as the visible scar of a much deeper, invisible dimensional fold. This fold would occur when the gravitational field in that specific, compressed volume of water becomes so intense that it momentarily touches an adjacent dimension, one we call subspace. This is not an act of magic, but a phenomenon of extreme topology, the deep sea bending the rules of the universe. In subspace, the fundamental constants of physics might be slightly or radically different. Time might move at a different rate. Gravity might pull in 6 directions instead of 3, or energy might exist in a non-electromagnetic form. The subtle exchange of these foreign energies could be what manifests as the unexplained magnetic and gravity anomalies that deep-sea surveys sometimes detect near trenches. These shifts in familiar fields are the whispers, the sonic and energetic bleed-through from the warped reality next door. The concept of a stable warp is the true enigma. Unlike the transient wormholes often theorized, the oceanic fold would be geologically locked. It would be tethered by the tectonic plates, making its position predictable, and stabilized by the 1,000 atmospheres of pressure that act as a constant, counteracting force, preventing the warp from collapsing or expanding uncontrollably. This stability means the portal isn't a flash of light, but a fluid, passive threshold, a doorway you would sink through, rather than step through. Any object passing into this fold would experience a momentary loss of conventional reference points. Your velocity might suddenly increase without physical propulsion, or your perception of direction might invert as your current frame of reference loses its hold on the established geometry. The creatures that inhabit the Hadal zone, the organisms built for total compression, might actually be subtly existing in this warped boundary area. Their biological structures, gelatinous, pressure-resistant, and chemically unique, may be uniquely adapted to the fluid topology of the fold, built to survive the transition where dimensions touch. Their very existence is proof that life can adapt to a space-time we consider impossible. To imagine the whispers of subspace is to realize that the most remote part of our planet may be the most cosmically interconnected. The Challenger Deep is not an endpoint. It is a point of departure, a natural aperture where the relentless physics of the deep ocean have unknowingly built the universe's ultimate low-energy gateway right beneath our feet. The deep sea silence is simply the quiet hum of 2 realities struggling to remain separated. We have named the very bottom of the ocean the geological floor, the abyssal plain, and the trenches. But this designation is merely a convention, a label we affix to the point where our sonar reflects back an echo. Now, in this meditative moment, we must ask, what happens if the descent does not stop? What does it mean to experience the perpetual fall? We are sinking not through water, but through a fluidity of space itself. The crushing pressure, which we established as the dimensional seal, now feels less like resistance and more like the smooth, constant embrace of the adjacent reality. The sensation of sinking is no longer violent. It is glacial, rhythmic, and utterly inescapable. There is no sound, save for the internal hush of our own perception, and no sight beyond the absolute, profound black that exists beyond light. Imagine the Challenger, deep passing above us, receding like a celestial object. It is a monumental mouth of rock and sediment, yet now it is simply a point of origin, leaving us to drift into an endless void that has no walls, no ceiling, and no discernible gravitational center. We are no longer bound by the geography of Earth, but by the pure, unconstrained topology of the portal. This perpetual fall is not physical motion as we understand it, but a state of being. It is the feeling of slipping out of the three-dimensional constraints of our reality and entering the fluid geometry of subspace. In this place, the forces that tethered us to the surface, buoyancy, light, and directional gravity, have evaporated. We are adrift in a spatial concept, a slow, gentle surrender to the unknown. There is a strange, inverse comfort in this complete lack of reference. On the surface, our minds are constantly measuring, charting, and predicting. Here, there are no metrics. There are no minutes, no miles, no compass points. There is only the continuous rhythmic pressure of the descent, which our consciousness begins to interpret as a form of deep, rhythmic breathing. The deep is not empty. It is a volume of pure possibility, and the fall is our passage into it. If the portal world is truly a fold in space, then our descent is actually the process of moving sideways through an additional dimension. We are not traveling further down, but further in. The endlessness of the fall reflects the boundless nature of the adjacent reality, a space where Euclidean rules cease to apply and a line can extend infinitely without ever leaving its local area. The feeling of perpetual is the consequence of entering a space with infinite depth contained within a finite border. Allow your mind to relax into this rhythm. There is no need to measure the distance, only to accept the sensation. You are weightless, yet profoundly aware of the water's immense force. You are silent, yet surrounded by the echoes of compressed time. The perpetual fall is the universe's most profound lullaby, sung in the language of pressure and shadow. It is the moment we stop striving against the ocean and simply allow the ocean to carry us through. This deep, dark descent is the true initiation, the separation from all things known, and the final hypnotic preparation for the alien wonders that must exist beyond the last whisper of our world's logic. We are taught to look up, to gaze at the stars and imagine the infinite black beyond our sky, the final frontier. But the paradox of human curiosity is this: we have explored the cosmos with greater zeal and dedicated more resources to charting distant galaxies than we have to understanding the boundless liquid darkness right here on Earth. This is the curious reality of ocean versus cosmos. The two environments, deep ocean and deep space, share a profound, hostile commonality. Both are realms of extreme isolation, where the slightest failure in engineering or judgment results in immediate, irreversible catastrophe. Both demand technology built to withstand conditions fundamentally hostile to human life. Space requires protection from a vacuum that would boil your blood and the relentless assault of radiation. The deep ocean requires protection from a crushing pressure that reduces metal to powder and a corrosive environment that eats away at all matter. Yet consider the metrics of human presence. Only 27 people have successfully descended to the Challenger Deep, the lowest known point on Earth, a location only about 7 miles away from the surface. Compare this to the number of individuals who have traveled to space, over 600 astronauts, or the 12 people who have actually walked on the surface of the Moon. The very bottom of our planet remains a more exclusive, less visited location than an extraterrestrial body 240,000 miles away. The reason for this disparity is rooted in the physics of perception. We can explore space without physically traveling there, simply because light travels through the vacuum. We can place telescopes on mountain tops and gaze billions of light years away, charting galaxies and nebula in stunning resolution. The cosmos speaks in the universal language of light. The ocean, however, is a silent, dark curtain. Light penetrates only the topmost layers, and radio waves, the tool of cosmic communication, cannot penetrate salt water. To truly explore the deep ocean, you must physically go there. Mapping the seafloor requires years of laboriously slow, expensive sonar runs by ships, and detailed exploration necessitates dropping robotic submersibles tethered by miles of specialized, high-strength cable, or sending down uniquely engineered, human-rated vehicles. While space exploration challenges our ability to escape Earth's gravity, deep ocean exploration challenges our ability to withstand Earth's own overwhelming mass. The technical challenge is often considered greater. It is easier to build a vessel that contains 1 atmosphere of air in a vacuum than it is to build a vessel capable of withstanding 1/100 atmospheres of pressure. This comparison is not meant to diminish the grandeur of space, but to reframe the profound mystery within our own planet. The deep ocean is, in many respects, the truer final frontier, an environment so alien that NASA often uses deep-sea hydrothermal vents and volcanic regions as analogues for what they expect to find on icy, subsurface oceans of moons like Europa. If we know more about the topography of Mars than we do about much of our own abyssal plain, it suggests that the secrets of the deep are fiercely guarded, demanding a kind of physical and intellectual fortitude far exceeding the demands of an outward journey. This unknown, unvisited majority of our planet may be the precise reason the ocean is a potential dimensional portal, because we cannot truly perceive what is there. We cannot detect the subtle mechanisms that allow a gateway to another reality to exist, hidden beneath the waves. The lack of exploration suggests a lack of knowledge, and a lack of knowledge invites the very possibility of the impossible. We move past the sheer magnitude of pressure to the imaginative core of our journey, the gate in the abyss. This is the core concept of a stable, massive, non-Euclidean physical gateway resting deep in the trenches, specifically the Challenger Deep. This gate is not a device of metal and wiring, but a consequence of impossible geometry achieved through extreme terrestrial forces. Forget the smooth, predictable shapes of our surface world. Euclidean geometry, the simple rules of straight lines, flat planes, and triangles adding up to 180 degrees, governs our day-to-day reality. But the Challenger Deep is the result of tectonic forces so immense and a compression so profound that it may have twisted the local geometry of space-time into a non-Euclidean form. Imagine drawing a triangle on a perfectly flat sheet of paper. Its angles must sum to 180 degrees. Now draw that same triangle on the surface of a sphere. The angles will add up to more than 180 degrees. This is non-Euclidean geometry. The Challenger Deep, being a colossal concave depression formed by the subducting Pacific Plate, is a place of such extreme local curvature that the basic rules of spatial perception may begin to fail. The gate in the abyss is, therefore, a natural fold in the geometry of the Earth. It is a region where the deep ocean's pressure has squeezed our familiar three-dimensional space into a shape that provides a momentary shortcut to another dimension. This portal would appear to our limited human senses not as a conventional door, but as a structure that defies logic. Perhaps its internal distances are greater than its external dimensions, or its walls seem to curve inward and simultaneously stretch outward. This non-Euclidean physical gateway must be massive, stable, and deeply embedded. It is likely not floating but intrinsically linked to the tectonic plates, its existence guaranteed by the constant geological grind, the very source of the immense pressure that holds the dimensional seal. The gate may manifest as a section of the sea floor that simply stops obeying the known laws of light and space. Sonar pulses aimed at it might not return at all, or they might return an echo of a structure too large to be contained in the small slot of the Challenger Deep. We can speculate that the material of the gate is the ancient, subducted oceanic crust itself, rock that has been heated, pressurized and chemically altered at the very boundary of the mantle. This ultra-dense, high-pressure rock acts as the necessary anchoring material for the dimensional warp. It is the solid frame for the fluid portal. Legends of mysterious submerged structures deep in the Pacific, such as those sometimes claimed to be detected by seismic analysis, could be the distant, highly distorted echoes of this non-Euclidean gateway. What looks like an impossibly large pyramid-shaped anomaly in seismic data may simply be the way our conventional Euclidean instruments interpret a four-dimensional object resting in three-dimensional space. The pyramid shape is the closest approximation our minds can make to a reality that contains both extreme curvature and infinite depth. This stability is crucial. Unlike theoretical black holes or artificial high-energy portals, the gate in the abyss is patient. It has existed for millennia, locked by pressure and maintained by the planet's slow, continuous geological energy. It is not an accident, but a feature of the Earth's deep geometry, a profound statement that the final frontier is not in the distant vacuum, but in the deepest, most compressed reality on our own world. The ultimate question is whether this non-Euclidean gateway requires a key, or whether its strange geometry is itself an irresistible invitation to the right frequency, a siren call to beings or energies capable of surviving the journey through the impossible curve of the deepest sea. Our descent has finally led us to the world's most profound geological feature, a place of terminal depth known as the Challenger Deep. This is not merely a deep spot on the ocean floor. It is a geophysical anomaly, a small slot-shaped valley within the crescent of the Mariana Trench, where the sheer, crushing scale of the water column reaches its absolute maximum. Its current most accurate measurement stands at approximately 10,135 meters below sea level. To truly appreciate this depth, we must go beyond the numbers. The hydrostatic pressure here exceeds 1,086 bar, or over 16,000 pounds per square inch. This is the equivalent weight of placing 25 fully laden jumbo jets onto the area of your small car. This pressure does not merely press down, it changes the very physical state of the water itself. At this extreme depth, water becomes 5% more dense than it is at the surface, turning the liquid into an ultra-compressed medium that begins to resist conventional laws of fluid dynamics. This immense compression is the first sign that we have reached a point where terrestrial physics begin to break down. The Challenger Deep is the result of subduction, a titanic, slow-motion geological war where the ancient, cold, and dense Pacific plate is relentlessly forced beneath the younger, lighter Mariana plate. This process creates a massive structural flaw, a tear in the planet's very crust which continues to sink and deepen. This constant, slow grinding of the oldest oceanic crust against the mantle creates a zone of unstable equilibrium, a place where the Earth's geological machinery is under the greatest possible stress. The tension generated by this subduction is far more than just a source of earthquakes. It is a concentrator of energy. The Challenger Deep is, in effect, a geophysical focus point, constantly flexing and being pulled by the planet's deepest gravitational and tectonic forces. It is the one location on Earth where the crustal membrane is thinnest and most actively being recycled into the planet's molten interior. The continuous seismic activity recorded around the Mariana Trench, with hundreds of quakes occurring regularly, may not just be a byproduct of plate movement. From a speculative, interdimensional perspective, this seismic friction could be interpreted as the vibration of the nexus itself, the audible groan of space-time being warped by extreme mass and pressure. The seafloor here is constantly being covered and smoothed by redistributed, superfine sediment which settles like fresh snowfall after every deep-sea tremor, covering any trace of what may have passed through. In the 1960 pioneer dive of the Trieste, explorers reported seeing a crack form in the plexiglass window, a silent, terrifying testament to the impossibility of the pressure they faced. This vulnerability of human-made materials underscores the idea that at this depth, the rules of structural integrity are dramatically altered. The Challenger Deep demands that anything within it be either non-solid, like the gelatinous creatures that thrive there, or immensely, impossibly dense. This extreme, stable and singular point of pressure and geological flux is why the Challenger Deep stands as the ultimate nexus point. It is the place where the forces required to breach dimensions, gravity, pressure, and tectonic instability converge at their highest possible intensity. It is the planet's singularity and the most logical place to imagine the barrier between realities finally dissolving, replaced by an open, dark gate. This film explores how the Challenger Deep is not a static endpoint, but a dynamic, churning wellspring, a site where the very bedrock is being torn, reformed and pressed by unimaginable forces, creating the ideal conditions for a portal to another world to exist, hidden beneath the absolute quiet of the deep. We turn now from describing the intensity of the deep to contemplating its function. The crushing, immense pressure we encountered at the Challenger Deep, the thousands of atmospheres pressing inward, is more than just a barrier to our exploration. In the context of the deep ocean as a dimensional portal, this extreme hydrostatic force must be considered a geophysical mechanism, a dimensional lock or key. On the surface, we experience pressure as a simple constraint, a physical limit. But in the deep, pressure is elevated to the level of a cosmic constant. It is the defining stable condition of the Hadal zone. If a parallel world existed immediately adjacent to ours, sharing a boundary layer, one would expect the barrier between them to be reinforced at its weakest, most geologically stressed point. Our deep trenches, created by the tectonic grind, are exactly that point. The ocean's pressure, then, acts as the reinforcement, the natural safety feature installed by planetary mechanics. Imagine the fabric of space-time not as an empty void, but as a dense, elastic sheet. To punch a hole through that sheet requires immense, localized energy, or conversely, immense, sustained compression. This is where the idea of the pressure lock begins. The enormous weight of the water column may be actively holding the dimensional membrane closed, preventing the chaos of the adjacent reality from spilling into our own. The pressure acts as a seal, maintaining the rigid separation between the two worlds. This theory finds an intriguing, if speculative, echo in the nature of black holes. A black hole represents a singularity where gravity reaches such an extreme density that it warps space-time infinitely, creating a one-way portal. While the ocean's pressure is caused by mass, water, rather than a singularity, the principle of terminal compression remains. In the Challenger Deep, where the water is 5% denser than at the surface, we are approaching the limit of what everyday matter can endure. The seal is necessary because the other world, the one beyond the portal, might operate under fundamentally different physical laws, perhaps a lower energy state, a different set of fundamental constants, or even an inverted pressure gradient. If the portal were simply open, the resulting explosive exchange between two disparate physical realities would be catastrophic, tearing our own world apart. The deep sea pressure acts as the counterweight, the constant, immense force required to keep that volatile exchange locked down. Conversely, pressure could be the key. If the goal is not to contain the adjacent world, but to access it, then the extreme pressure may be the necessary catalyst to align the dimensional frequencies. It is a principle of resonance. Only an object or energy source capable of matching or exceeding that pressure can successfully navigate the boundary. The few creatures that thrive in the Hadal zone are living proof that biological matter can be adapted to this impossible constant. Their bodies, built largely of incompressible water and specialized molecules, are essentially natural pressure keys. Furthermore, this immense force may explain why the portal is only rumored to exist in the ocean and not on the land. The planet's tectonic system, the deep, slow war between plates, provides the geological vulnerability, the trench, while the water provides the kinetic lock, the pressure. Without the weight of the endless ocean above, the fissure would be exposed and violently unstable. As we visualize this seal, we see the entire Pacific Basin as a massive, inverted pressure vessel, with the Challenger Deep as the single, weakest point secured by the most profound weight on the planet. The silence and the darkness of the deep are merely the absence of the forces that distract us at the surface. Down here, the only reality is the pressure itself, a constant, unyielding reminder that we are at the very threshold of two different forms of existence, separated only by the sheer, stable violence of water's weight.
Imagine for a moment the atmosphere above you, a vast, invisible ocean of air pressing down on your shoulders at one atmosphere of pressure.
It is the defining condition of our lives, yet we rarely feel it. Now turn that image upside down and fill it with liquid.
This is the scale of the ocean.
It is an inverse sky, a gravitational prison of water that we have barely begun to map. We are dropping now past the last vestiges of daylight, past the twilight zone where the sun's memory finally fades. The vast majority of the ocean, the abyssal zone, is a world of perpetual night. Its sheer, crushing scale is difficult to convey because our terrestrial minds are not built to hold such numbers. If you were to place Mount Everest at the bottom of the deepest point, the Challenger Deep, its peak would still be covered by over a mile of water. That water is heavy.
Every 10 meters we descend, another atmosphere of pressure is added.
By the time we reach the average depth of the ocean floor, we are living under the weight of hundreds of jumbo jets. At the very bottom, in the Hadal zone, named for Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. To put this crushing scale in context, consider the void of deep space. We look at space and see an infinite, hostile vacuum, an environment that tears the body apart from the inside out. But the deep ocean is hostile in the exact opposite way. It does not pull you apart. It seeks to press you into pure density. It is an environment that would collapse a titanium submersible, reducing any structure to powder in a fraction of a second. The abyssal zone is not an empty void. It is a region of active geometric compression. This is where the physics of the fluid world take over, demanding a kind of impossible, self-contained existence from any life form that survives there. It is the ultimate terra incognita, a frontier that has seen fewer human visitors than the surface of the moon. And yet, this crushing force is the very thing that makes the deep so compelling. This overwhelming, stable pressure acts as an immense physical seal. It is a natural, unyielding guardian. But if that seal is, in fact, the point of maximum stress, if that boundary is where the physics of our world meet the physics of
another, then the very force that attempts to
destroy the body may be the force that opens the door to an adjacent reality. The impossible depth is, therefore, not a dead end. It is a threshold. It is the point of contact between the known world of water and and pressure, and the unknown world that rests just beyond the deepest, darkest point. We begin to wonder if the scale of the ocean rivals the scale of the cosmos in its mystery. What other laws, what other universes rest beneath that great weight? Let the pressure sink in. If the deepest trenches of the ocean represent the ultimate challenge, the physical lock of the cosmos, then our journey must now pause at the opposite extreme, the surface. We contemplate this shimmering line, the place we see every day, not as a simple boundary between air and water, but as a subtle, flowing dimensional threshold. For humans, the ocean's surface is where the world ends and the journey begins. It is the plane where light refracts, where waves break, and where our breath runs out. We treat it as the final immutable edge of our territory. Yet the surface is not a wall. It is a membrane, constantly agitated and shifting, suggesting a state of fluidity, not just in its composition, but in its very reality. Consider the act of reflection. When the ocean is calm, the surface becomes a perfect mirror, reflecting our own world back at us. This mirror, however, is a deception. What we see is merely a two-dimensional copy of our reality, a flat plane that masks the terrifying depth beneath. But what if this reflection is more than simple optics? What if the surface is not reflecting our world, but is actually the face of another, a colossal lens distorting the light from the adjacent dimension? The ocean's surface is subject to every whim of the atmosphere, wind, rain, and the pull of the moon. It is rarely solid, perpetually unstable. This constant agitation, the endless rhythm of the tide and wave, could be seen as the subtle breathing of the portal itself. The tides, that massive daily pulse of water driven by celestial mechanics, might be the two worlds gently inhaling and exhaling against each other. Our world's moon may not just be pulling our water, it may be synchronizing the dimensional flows. If the trenches are the fixed points where the fabric of reality is torn by gravity, the surface is the fluid medium where the tear is veiled. It is a place of constant exchange. Energy flows from air to water, heat transfers, and gaseous elements dissolve. If two dimensions were separated only by a shimmering film, you would expect this precise kind of subtle, energetic bleed-through. Imagine, too, the perspective of a creature living just on the other side. For them, our breathable air and our solid ground would exist above a ceiling of dense, chaotic liquid. They would look up and see a ceiling of shimmering blue, penetrated by occasional, frightening shafts of light, a sight perhaps as strange and impossible to them as a black hole is to us. The surface, then, is our first clue that the transition may not be sudden and violent, but gradual and intimate. The ocean doesn't just hold the portal, it is the portal's covering, a colossal, restless shroud over the mysteries below. By refusing to see the surface as a solid boundary, we begin to appreciate it as a threshold of possibilities, an invitation to consider the vast, fluid dimension just beneath our everyday world. This silent, oscillating veil is the gateway we cross every time we step from the sand to the shore. It is the beginning of the great descent. Our descent continues now into a realm defined by a single dramatic loss, the cessation of light. This is the twilight zone, or the mesopelagic layer, a region of the ocean column that stretches from roughly 650 feet to 3,300 feet below the surface. We are passing through a state of transition where the world slowly stops communicating in the language of the sun above us. The light zone, the photic realm, is a place of color, growth, and relentless activity driven by photosynthesis. But here, in the twilight, the spectrum of visible light is progressively filtered.
Red is the first color to vanish, followed by orange and yellow.
By the time we reach the deepest limits of this zone, only the faintest ghostly blue-green remains, an ambient, otherworldly luminescence that seems to come from nowhere and everything at once. This is the ocean's Great Hallway, a corridor between the habitable surface and the true abyss. Life here exists in a state of perpetual camouflage. Many creatures are transparent, their bodies built of gelatinous low-density tissue, perfectly adapted to exist in the low light without casting a shadow that might betray their presence to a predator lurking just below. But the silence is the most profound change. In the sunlit world, sound travels quickly, but is often muffled by the chaotic noise of surface activity. Here, sound is amplified, clarified, and carried for hundreds, even thousands of miles. There is no wind, no surface chop, only the deep, resonant echoes of whales, earthquakes, and the subtle clicking of unseen life in the distant water column. It is a silence so vast, it paradoxically makes any sound terrifyingly distinct. We are traveling now to the invisible line where the twilight officially ends. At this depth, around 1,000 meters, the final particle of sunlight is absorbed. The ocean is no longer dimly lit. It is now the midnight zone, the bathypelagic layer, and the boundary we cross is one of absolute, unyielding blackness. This transition is the true gateway to the dimensional possibility. For us, light is life. For the ocean, the absence of light is a creative force. Everything beyond this point is an inversion of our surface world. Where we evolve to use light for energy, creatures here evolve to generate their own light, the bioluminescence that flashes in cryptic codes across the vast dark. Where we seek warmth, they embrace the constant, near-freezing chill. The midnight zone is where the weight of the water truly begins its reign. Pressure is no longer just a discomfort. It is a defining constant, a geophysical fact that warps the rules of biology and chemistry. This immense pressure, coupled with the profound silence, creates an environment of geological stillness. Movement is costly. Metabolism is slow. Life is an exercise in extreme patience and efficiency. If our reality is a brightly lit, loud room, the midnight zone is the silent, cold vault next door. And if the ocean is a portal to another world, this transition from the known sunlit world to the unknown silent abyss is the crucial point of entry. The absence of light here suggests the presence of a different kind of energy, a hidden light source or a non-visible spectrum of life that is fundamentally alien to our surface existence. We can imagine that the creatures of the portal world, living in their strange physics, might use this very same light-to-dark transition as a form of communication, a flicker of blue-green light, generated by a deep-sea creature, might be interpreted by the entity on the other side as a signal, a momentary breach in the curtain. So as we drift through this final band of shadow, we acknowledge that we are not just entering a darker place, we are entering a different medium. A medium where light, the anchor of our visible world, has been utterly abandoned, leaving us only with pressure, cold, and the amplified echoes of whatever mysteries lie further below. This is the great switch, the final turning point before the true enigma of the abyssal portal is encountered.